Hi, everybody. It's Mark Fisher. Welcome to our channel, Our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. Janice is still on vacation in Europe on a cruise, and she'll be back probably next week. But I just wanted to welcome you all to our channel. And we've got a special guest today, and he's an old friend of mine and somebody that you all probably know very well. And it is Marc Headley, otherwise known as Blown for Good. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Hey, guys. Hey, Mark.
It's good to have you here. I've been trying to, you've been busy all summer, but I wanted to, one of the reasons I wanted you on is because I reread your book. I actually listened to the audio book, and I'd read it when it first came out, but I re-listened to, or I read it on the audio, and I loved it. And I wanted to talk to you. I had questions and things like that I wanted to ask you. So I'm glad that you could come on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I love going on other channels, other SPTV channels, or even just other channels that are covering the subject of Scientology. I think that when I go on other channels, the pressure's off me because I'm watching the comments and I'm watching this and I'm getting the media and I'm checking this so when I can just sit back and answer questions, it's easy for me. And usually other people will ask questions that I wouldn't think to bring up on my own when I'm just doing a thing.
Exactly. Well, I've got some for you for sure.
It's just a different dynamic, and I love it. And I also like getting other channels that are doing stuff as part of SPTV. I love going on their channels if that's going to help them get a few more views or watch hours or subscribers or whatever they're trying to do. So, you can't go wrong with a guy named Mark. That's probably going to go your way,
Exactly. Well, just to let the viewers know, what we're going to do is basically I've got some slides and some questions I wanted to ask Mark about his book, and we'll tell the stories. Then we're going to actually answer questions after that. So if you've got a question, just write the word question in the chat, and to make it easier for us to spot it. And of course, if you want a super sticker, super chat, you can do that too. But yeah, if you want to do that, we'll answer questions. The other thing we're going to do right before questions is we're going to do a merch giveaway. I'm going to give away a coffee mug from our channel, from our merch store, so people can participate and win that if they would like as well. So I'm ready to start. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I want to tell quickly a story of how you got to the international base up in Gilman Hot Springs, because I was working for David Miscavige at the time as his corporate liaison in charge, and I basically was his guy at the Gold Base, and he was still the chairman of the board of Religious Technology Center. But anyway, we had to get personnel up to Gold, up to that location, to basically get personnel for the manufacturing area for the cassette tape line. And I ran somebody named Cheryl Detchiff. I'm sure you remember her, Cheryl.
Yep.
And Claudia Olander.
Yeah.
And they were down in PAC trying to find people to get them who qualified to come up to the base. And one of those people happened to be you, right, Mark?
That's right. They had they'd been producing cassette tapes of L. Ron Hubbard's lectures for years at Golden Era Productions. And it had turned out that they had produced about 300,000 cassettes that you couldn't hear L. Ron Hubbard when he was talking. So they're considered overt products. They're bad cassettes. And these cassettes cost about $1 each. So that's essentially, they wasted $300,000 at least. There might be even more than that was wasted in terms of production masters and copies. And there's all sorts of, excuse me, there's all sorts of steps that happen before the cassette stage. And those were all badly produced as well. So they took every single person that made the cassettes except for one, and they sent them to the RPF, or they kicked him out of Scientology. And the one person that they kept was a woman by the name of Clarice Brousseau, or her maiden name was Barnett, and she was Shelley Miscavige's sister.
That's right.
And she was the only one who didn't go to the RPF or get kicked out of the Sea Org. And she used to be like in the Sea Organization. She'd work with L. Ron Hubbard. Clarice and her sister both worked with L. Ron Hubbard when he first started the Sea Organization. And this woman, Clarice, I want to say she was in her late 30s at this point, maybe even 40s. She'd been in Scientology in the Sea Org for 2 decades or more. And she was a lieutenant junior grade. So she had bars and, rank, executive officer rank. And when I got there, she was like, petty officer, second class or something. She was like the next thing up from like a swamper, PO3 or PO2 or whatever it was. And so even though she didn't go to the RPF, she did get demoted substantially and was in big trouble.
Let me ask you a question. I want to ask you, okay, what was your first impression when you arrived at the Gold Base? Like, a lot of people, they didn't know where it was. It was a secret location, right? So when you arrived, did you arrive at night or day? Do you remember?
Yeah, I arrived at night. And in the Sea Organization, you don't get a lot of sleep. Los Angeles, the international headquarters, doesn't really matter. So I'm pretty sure that the person who drove me up, I want to say it was either Cheryl who drove me up, or no, it was actually a woman by the name of Renee Norton. She was the executive over the personnel department at the time, which was called like the supercargo. Right. And Renee Norton drove me up, and I think I fell asleep in the car when we were on the way to the base. So we're like, oh, we're going to the Ant Base. And I was like, oh, great. How long do you think it's going to be? And she said, oh, we'll get there when we get there. You're not even supposed to discuss the length of the drive to the Ant Base, because then somebody could just go, okay, if you went 65 miles an hour for this long, so it must be in this area somewhere. So
it's about 90 minutes. So people know it's a 90-minute drive. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, with traffic in LA, it could be a 3 or 4 hour drive. Absolutely. Yeah. Which I often made it do if I had to go between, because, why not? I think Renee Norton drove me up there. And when we arrived, my brain was almost about to break. When we arrived, like I could see, like the road was getting a little bit bumpy. We were going down, we went from Los Angeles, so we took the 101, I think, to the 10. And we took the 10 almost the entire way. The 10, Interstate 10, the 10 freeway, or the Interstate 10, I-10. We took that up to we got off at Beaumont, or we got off Jackrabbit Trail or Gilman Springs, whatever the exit is, and then we drove this really rough road. And when we did that, it was bumpy, and I was like, oh, we must be there. Now it's dark. We left at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night in Los Angeles. So we're getting there. It's like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. It's dark. And as we pull up to the international headquarters, there's a giant sign on the highway that says Golden Arrow Productions. And I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. This fucking place is a secret. You don't want anybody to know where it is, but there's a motherfucking LED sign on the highway that says tours welcome and Golden Arrow Productions. And I'm like, huh? Like, it was bewildering to me. Like, that's not the way to keep a secret.
No. And it's different. When I arrived back in 1982, you drove up, there were no lights. There was one little light outside the guard booth, which was at that time was by the garage. And so it's pitch black, and you drive up to this little light, and that was it. It was pretty wild.
Wasn't that a gas station in the days past? Yeah, so it's like one of these highway where there's like an awning, and then there's a few pumps there. And I've seen A lot of people over the years have sent me the resort pictures, like people that went there when it was a resort. It was called Gilman Hot Springs, and it was a natural springs. And people sent me postcards and matches and ashtrays that say Massacre Canyon Inn and Gilman Hot Springs, California. And I always, when I see them, I try to match it up. Like, oh, that's where the hole is, or oh, that's where we would eat dinner. Massacre Canyon Inn was like a place where they had fights. Like, I was told Muhammad Ali had a match there at the base in the Massacre Canyon Inn where we ate.
Well, in the old editing building, which then later became the audio building after I left, right?
Yeah.
That Ken Norton, who was a heavyweight champion fighter who fought Ali, that was his training camp when they first got the property, and he was there. And they had other boxers as well.
Wow. Yeah. There was there was a comedian from the early 1900s named W.C. Fields. He had performed there, and it was kind of like, I'm trying to think, in the movie Dirty Dancing, and they go to that sort of country club or that place. That's what Gilman Hot Springs looked like. It just looked like someplace like that. Oh, I don't hear you, dude. Sorry.
I muted because of my dog. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, I just blew my nose and I muted myself. And I was like, did I somehow mute Mark's?
No. Anyway, I was going to say, what was it like when you woke up in the morning and you could see where you were with the mountains and all that?
Well, so we got to the property, and then I want to say they were like, okay, you're here, you did this. I think I had just been approved, like I got approved the day before. So in order to go from the Los Angeles Sea Organization facility to the international headquarters, there's a lot of paperwork, and you get interrogated on the e-meter, and it could take somebody a year to get through that process. So from start to finish, easily. I mean, some people did it for 5 years. If you were a Sea Org member, it was almost like that's as high as you can get in the Sea Org. Yeah. I mean, there are these Church of Spiritual Technology and ASI, Author Services. There's these other kind of like really high up organizations, but unless you're gorgeous or you're super, super skilled at something, you're probably not going to go to one of those places. Only the really good looking people end up going to those places. That's what it seemed like to me. Like, you just have to be like someone who's really easy on the eyes, guy or gal, or just very talented at a skill they need. Otherwise, they're not. It's almost no one is qualified to be able to go to those places. The qualifications are so stringent.
Well, but speaking of here's how we looked at back in those days. Okay.
Oh my goodness! What's really funny? This picture of me is from Scientology. I don't have that picture.
I pulled it down from Google. I just Googled pictures of you, and I pulled it up, and I went, well, there you are at the base as you're a teenager there.
That is at the Star of California Clipper ship, and it's on a Sea Org day, which is the one day we would get off a year to just do whatever. And when we said, oh, this place is horrible and this place is that, and they weren't paying us and they were feeding us crap, and it was, we were prisoners, and they're like, well, here you are playing ping pong. I'm like, yeah, you can play ping pong in prison too. Whatever. I was like, that's your defense, is that, well, you did play ping pong.
Ping pong, yeah. Well, and then on the left, that's me. I'm also at the Star California at the, they had the waterfall at the end of the swimming pool.
Yeah, that's
and then
literally
they had the bird cages. That's where I'm standing. That's where I'm standing.
This is on the deck that's closest to the lower villa as you walk up that little path. This is right before you would leave the Star of California. But I know exactly where that picture took place that you're in as well. That's right near the. You're right. It's right below where like the stairs are that lead down that fountain.
Yeah, that's right. And then there was a fountain with the waterfalls and all that.
Yeah,
and I was there for that picture. Was I'd just done a wedding for somebody or something like that. But anyway, yeah, that's what we looked like back then.
Yeah. So then, so that you have to go through this process, and they call that clearances. So you're getting clearances, and you're getting it is literally security clearances to go to that property. And so in my case, I was only doing clearances for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I worked at a Scientology school. I used to work at the Los Angeles org when I was like between 10 and 12. I worked at the LA org during the summer. I was a communicator for this woman named Reggie Caldwell, who was the deputy commanding officer of Los Angeles organization. And I worked for her, and then I stuffed promo into envelopes and stuff like that. But so I did that. I worked at a school. I sold toy airplane gliders across America at malls.
Which is amazing. I've heard that story. It's pretty amazing.
And by the time I was 15, I joined the Sea Organization. So when you get these security clearances, like, have you ever robbed a bank? Have you ever worked for the government? Have you ever been part of a media organization? Have you ever seen a psychiatrist? You know, all these things that would disqualify you for your security clearance. I'm like, no, I've been working for you guys the whole time.
And that's why you were so clean. They could get you up there because basically they've done nothing.
Exactly. So one of these people that would be on clearances for a year, they see me and they're like, oh, you're going in session? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, good luck, man. You know, I come and they're telling me like what their weekly grind is. And I usually do this and I usually do that. And like a week and a half later, I'm like, peace out, bitches. I'm approved. And they're like, what? And then the other thing is also, I really, at the end of the day, I had no idea what the Int Base was. I never wanted to go there. I didn't even know it was a thing. And so when they were like, oh, you could go do this. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I got a good thing going here at Able. I'm getting paid minimum wage for 40 hours a week, not the whole 110 we were working, but I'm still getting minimum wage for the 40.
Money, yeah. At 16, that's pretty good money too.
Yeah. And I had been working at a school and I sold the toy airplane gliders. So I was okay at working and making money and, you know, that kind of thing. But I kind of had a good thing going in Los Angeles. I was doing my thing. It was a pain in my ass. And it was, you know, I didn't like all the people I worked with. And I had just gotten busted just a few months before from my post as the recruiter for the Association for Better Living and Education. Yeah. So when I got busted, they put me into accounts, into the Treasury Department. And I was really good at that. Like I really did. They had unpaid bills and they had backlogged invoicing and the files were just overflowing because they just didn't have anybody doing that. And so I got the area cleaned up. I got everything into current. I got all the bills paid. I got all the invoicing. And so I was sort of like, oh yeah, this is my jam. Stuff comes in, stuff goes out. I'm the only guy. Like I was the only person in the accounts department. So it wasn't like I was going to get into a fight with somebody about something. It's just like, I'm doing my own thing. And so when they were like, they actually came, these missionaries came and they brought me this thing and said, you need to read this. And it was, they send telexes in Scientology within the Sea Org. It was a telex. And I'm reading it and it's like, the following people have been chosen to go to the international headquarters. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I'm assuming this is my sister because, you know, she's she's a better Sea Org member than me. She follows the rules and she sort of plays along. And I'm just like, no, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. And they're like, no, you have to do it. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I don't have to do anything. So I wasn't the best one. And I read the list and I go, okay, yeah, my sister's going to Ant. And they go, read the list again, dummy. And I read the list again. I'm like, oh, my sister's on there, but I'm on there too. And so then I do the clearances. I get to the base, and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I know people that are there, because I grew up with this guy named Jesse Radstrom. He was at the Ent base, and we went to the same school. I actually lived with his family, so I knew he was.
You talk about it in your book too. Yeah.
Yeah, almost all of this I actually cover in the book, but we might be going into more detail or going off on branches that I don't cover. But
that's okay.
But regardless, there was another gal by the name of Ollie Mintz. And Ollie Mintz was also at the Ent base. And she was like WDC Sea Org or WDC programs or something like that at the time. And she was the one who had written that telex that I had read. So I was like, oh. And I even thought to myself, I think she put me on the list because she knew me, and she's like, yeah, these people are easy to get to the Ent base because they have never done anything outside of Scientology to disqualify them for being able to work there. And there were, I want to say, at least 30 or 40 people at the international headquarters that had gone to the same Scientology schools I did. They went to Delphi, Oregon, or they went to Delphi, Los Angeles, or they went to Mace Kingsley or Delphi in Clearwater, or some other Scientology school. There was many of us there. Barrett Oliver went to Apple School. Eric Geisler went to Delphi, Oregon. Tori Mackay, that worked directly for David Miscavige, she was one of the first Delphi, Oregon graduates. So it was sort of like an easy get for the Ent base if you could get somebody in the Sea Org who'd been to one of those things. So when we get there, the person they put me to stay with was Jesse. So Jesse Radstrom, he was my roommate when I got there, but he was in CMO Int at the time. And but we were staying in these apartments in Hemet or San Jacinto, depends on where you were. But at this time, it was in Hemet, and it was an apartment complex called the Devonshire. Yeah, Devonshire.
And just so people know, we had moved everybody off the base because we're going to build the birthing buildings and we need to renovate everything. And so everybody used to live on the base. So then Miscavige is like, oh no, we're going to rent all these apartment units in town. And we rented quite a few of them for years. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, the thing I was going to say is they did a calculation on how much it would cost to build all these buildings. And I think somebody came up with the figure that was like $2.5 million to build apartments for the staff.
On the property. Yeah.
And this was done early on, before there were that many people working there. And so they were like, okay, so we need to do that. It's a lot, but we need to do it. Okay, so then they started renting this one place, and then we got some more people, and then they rented another place, and then they got some more. Before you know it, they've got apartments all over Hemet and San Jacinto, and they've spent $5 million on rents on apartments. And you're like, I know that you think you should build a building here. And I know you know how much it costs to build a building, yet you spent twice that on apartments. And eventually, I'm going to say, I think they spent $8 million on apartments in the end. Before they moved everybody, it was somewhere like $8 to $9 million. But also, they took out, I think they financed or they did something in relation to the money that they needed to build the birthing buildings. And they secured the money however they did it, and then they never built them. So not only were they paying the rents the whole time, but they were also paying the interest on whatever finance deal they worked out to build the buildings. And I remember there was a big investigation at the base in the, I'm going to say in the early 2000s. And it was like birthing buildings versus apartments. They'd spent like $25 million in the end.
And it's David Miscavige, which you know very well. He constantly overspends on things like that because rather than doing the right thing and spending the right amount of money, they waste it for years. It's just crazy. Yeah. Not just on this, on everything. Just about.
Oh yeah, I mean, even when they built the birthing buildings in the end, you weren't there when this happened, Mark.
No, they were gone.
But when they ended up actually building the buildings, they were tens of millions in the end for them to build them. But somebody. I think David Miscavige or somebody commented that the ceilings seemed a little low. Like that could be a problem. And why are we kind of like just squeezing everybody? Why couldn't we get a little bit bigger? So they raised the ceilings. They just raised the ceilings. Anyway, they built the buildings. They framed them. They got everything going. And then they called the air conditioning guys to come in. And the air conditioning guys were, where are we supposed to put all the ducts and everything? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, there's no place for the ducts. And they're like, oh, like when they raised the ceilings, they just erased the ducts on the plans. They didn't move anything. They just raised the ceiling. Like David Miscavige said, raise the ceiling. We raised the ceilings. You didn't tell us to move all that air conditioning stuff up higher. But so they had to, the concrete was poured, the buildings were made. Yeah. So I'm not sure how they ever really resolved that because they're multi-story buildings. So you can't like stretch them. I don't know if they put in mini splits or I don't know what they ended up doing, but
Let me move forward here on a little bit, okay? Because you and I were like two ships passing in the night.
We really were. When I first got there,
he arrived. Yeah, I was on my way out the door for good.
When I was first there, you were still walking around.
Oh yeah.
And for those who don't know, if you're in Golden Era Productions, there's about 10 different organizations at the international headquarters. Like even different corporations and different DBAs and different, each different organization had a different a class. It was like if you're in Golden Era Productions, that's the lower class. That's the lowest class of Sea Org member at the end of base. And then there's CMO Gold, CMO Int, Exec Strata, L. Ron Hubbard Personal Public Relations Office, Exec Strata, WDC, all these different ones. And they go up to RTC. And then even in RTC, it goes, there's a bunch of different divisions, and then there's COB's office, and that's the highest you can be. And so Mark his job was corporate liaison in charge, or CLIC. And that was about as high as you could get besides being David Miscavige. Like you knew that, that dude's boss is David Miscavige. That's it, you know? So when you would come around, I was always like, whatever we do, this guy's telling Dave about it. So you better mind your P's and Q's when this guy walks around. And also you were
I was a pretty good guy though, right?
You were very kind of like, you were very conversational in terms of an executive. Most executives, including like, the guy that was the boss of me in that place, his name was Jason Bennick. And he was a really short, there he is. That guy, he doesn't look like that anymore. He doesn't have any hair. It's all shaved.
By the way, that picture is my wedding, and he's standing behind me because he worked for me at that time, and he was the best man in my wedding. So
wow. Is that also at the ship?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. The
up where the
Clipper ship.
forecastle, up where the forecastle, the front of the ship was.
That is where that ping pong picture is, and
Yeah.
in that exact spot.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't
so
talk about
you could get
Jason. This was
married
right
there.
there. Yeah.
You could play ping pong. It was a very, very happy
Oh
place.
yeah.
Anyway, can you put it back to the other way just because we
Yeah.
had it that way the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
time?
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah. No,
No, it's all
that's
good.
me not remembering.
Otherwise, I can't even see what's going on because I've
Yeah,
already made
yeah,
the
I get
screen
it.
really tiny. So yeah, we had Jason Bennick was my boss, and he was there all day, pretty much. So we talked about before they made all those overt product cassettes, all the bad quality cassettes, and every night, all of the Golden Era Productions crew would come to the area where they made the cassettes. And there it is. That's Building 36. So those windows that are not covered by trees on the first floor, you can see right in between those two big trees. There's like three windows. That is where the cassettes were made. Those three windows are where the cassettes were produced.
And these were L. Ron Hubbard lectures that were sold to all Scientologists all over the world. So that's what the cassettes were. They were recorded cassettes that we would package and then sell. Go ahead.
Yeah. So every day, all of the crew from Golden Era Productions would come into this area, and we would put the cassettes through a heat tunnel and warm them up, and then peel the paper labels off of them, and then use alcohol to clean off any adhesive residue. And then those cassettes were sold like in Los Angeles to be able to record stuff on. Yeah, they'd sell them for like 5 cents or something like that each. These cassettes cost about $1 each because they had this special kind of metal. TDK was the brand, and they made a very special formulation that had metal in it that would just have a better dynamic range of sound. It just had it was
the best quality. The best quality cassette tape you could have was TDK metal, and
that's right.
Everything had to be the best on these things.
Yeah, it was called TDK MA. I think that stood for metal alloy. And we would buy the cassettes, these giant reels of tape, and it was on a hub, and that hub would snap into the machines that would do the high speed recording, and you could fit about that's it, Gauss, the name of the company that produced the master machine and the slave machines. Right. You would play a master of the L. Ron Hubbard lecture. It was like a 1-inch. Was it a 1-inch? I think it was.
Yeah, it was a production master. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say it was a 1-inch master, and the master was recorded at regular speed, and the master would be on this thick tape that would play through this master machine in high speed, and it would play it at 32 times high speed, and these slave recorders would record the sound coming out of the master at 32 times speed as well. And so, that's a slave. It's called a Gauss or C-Tech Gauss pancake recording slave. And you can see you put on the pancake on the left side there, and then you thread it through this thing and you wrap it around the right side, and then you put it in like standby mode and record, and then the master spins up, and once it's to speed, there's a little piece of foil at the head of the lecture, and as soon as that foil goes by, it tells all the machines it's time. And then they get up to speed, and then they all start recording. And so these machines were broken. And that's why they produced all these lectures that didn't sound good.
When you say broken, okay, they were at factory specification, right? But that was not good enough for David Miscavige on L. Ron Hubbard's lectures. They had to be better than factory specifications, okay? And basically, he would listen for the finest little problem or issue, whereas the normal consumer doesn't care about that. And that was what the problem was. So these guys, you guys were the people in there were trying to get these machines to better than factory specifications to David Miscavige's ears, quality, saying is okay. And it was insanity in terms of, because it was going around the clock 24 hours a day for weeks.
Yeah.
Weeks,
so I'm going to try to explain that, but in layman's terms, if you have a master recording and then you make copies of it, you want the copy to sound as good as the master, or as good as it can, to the master. And most people, they have like, well, the way that we tested and the way everything was based is that there's a frequency range that goes from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So 20 Hz to 20 kHz. And all of these individual frequencies in that range exist on the master. And then when you make the copy, you want it to be around the same level. All of those frequencies, if they're at this level on that recording, you want them to be at that level on the copy. And so the way they would explain it was, it's this frequency range plus or minus 3 or 4 decibels.
Decibels, dB.
Yeah. And the machines could do plus or minus 3 to 4 decibels all day long. That was fine. You could do that. For David Miscavige, that additional decibel was unacceptable. So instead of having it plus or minus 3 or plus or minus 4, it was his requirement that every copy be plus or minus no more than 2 dBs on certain frequencies and no more than a dB and a half on the frequencies which you can hear. So the frequencies which most people can't hear, he was like, okay, those could be plus or minus 2. But the ones that most people can hear, the ones that are in my voice right now and that you're hearing on this recording, he wanted those frequencies to not be more than plus or minus 1.5 decibel. Now, most people can hear the difference between a decibel and 0. Like if you said, oh, this is at 20, oh, this is at 21. Most people would be like, I think it went a little bit louder. Like it's almost indiscernible. 0.5 decibel is very likely undiscernible. So if it was a dB and a half, you may be like, it sounds a little different, but it's not that much. So my job was that on the master recording, there's a bunch of tones that are on that master recording. And they're only at the very, very end of the pancake. So all of those copies are going by and recording the lecture. And when that little piece of foil goes by, it tells the master, don't play these tones on the tape. So the slaves never hear them. The slaves only hear them on the last time it's going to go around. It says, okay, put those tones down. And so then when you get the pancake, I would thread it onto my machine, and right there at the very end of the recording would be those tones that were on the master tape. And I would use a spectrum analyzer and a bunch of different Hewlett-Packard 400 FL voltmeter to see what the level tone was, and then I'd use the spectrum analyzer to analyze the pink noise and what those were, and then I would create a graph of that frequency range, and then I would print it out on a sheet, and the sheet had an area where those frequencies could be already pre-printed onto the paper. So when I printed out the graph, it would plot the frequencies within the zone it should be. And if it wasn't in that zone, then I would flunk it. And I would say, that's not okay. It's got to go back. Okay, so...
Well, I just to put it in practical terms, okay?
Yeah.
Because I've had a long time to think about this, right?
Yeah.
Miscavige was checking these things with the highest quality headphones that existed. They were called Stax headphones.
Yes.
So literally...
Uh-oh. I lost you for a second, if you can still hear me. I don't know if you guys are not hearing.
I'm back now.
Okay, good.
I'm
Sorry.
back now. Sorry about that. I touched my ears. Maybe that's what it was. But anyway, he's listening to them on these really super high quality. So he's like splitting hairs. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And he set up this whole thing where you had to quality control all this stuff, and you did an excellent job in all that stuff, right? But the average consumer, they didn't really care. You're listening to L. Ron Hubbard from 1962 pontificate about something, and as long as you can hear him, who cares? You know what I mean? It was like it was good quality. Everything was quality. Tape, cassette shells, everything was like that. But like, because his standards were so high, right? Yeah, that's why all this stuff happened.
Well, that was also just the first checkpoint,
right?
So it would get so you would have the we had 16 of these slave machines.
Slaves. Yeah.
So you'd have one master, and an L. Ron Hubbard lecture is usually about 45 minutes on side one, and then 45 minutes on side two. So when you have a cassette, you're recording, and this is a crazy thing too. You're recording side one forward, but you're recording side two backward. So it's kind of wild, technique when you think about it. But that master is playing side one, 2 channels of side one going forward. It's playing side two going backwards, and the slaves are recording whatever they're getting. And then when you check it, I would check the tones, make sure those are good. And as long as they were good, then the pancake would be marked a pass, and it would be put in a pile, a stack, and all the passes would add up, and all the flunks would add up. And then the ones that flunked would go and get erased, and then we could reuse those again. Eventually, when we ran out of tape, we would use all the flunks. We'd erase them and then use those to record again. But
but that's why I left. I mean, this line, they were trying to get this Gauss line to David Miscavige's standards. And literally, people like Bruce Plotz, Gary Lou, all these people, and up all night around the clock for weeks. At the same time, the flood had happened at the base in August of that summer, right? So there was a mission that was in there that was causing all this stuff. And I basically got to the point where I was getting in trouble because, they weren't reaching Miscavige's standards. And I just got to the point where I went like, the hell with this. This is never going to happen. And so that was when I was like, adios, I'm out of here, after he beat me up. And there's other things that happened too. But
and some of those, well, that time when he beat you up is in my book, because I got in trouble for, I didn't have glasses, but I needed glasses.
Yeah.
And so I had passed a bunch that were like 1/10 of a decibel into the no zone, but the plotter doesn't always print it right. And the guy that printed me the forms that I would use, it was printed on a Mimeo machine, and there's play in that. And so it was always just like, it's good. It's in there. But no, it was 1/10 of a dB off. And so what I was saying before is, once I would pass them, then they would go to the cassette loaders, and then they would load those pancakes into what are called the cassette tape itself. Like, it was called a King loader. The brand name was King, that made these loaders. And the cassettes, before they have tape in them, they're cassette shells. And then that little plastic thing that you slide the label into, and then you put that. I think the The printed thing is called a J card because it looks like a J when it slides into it. And then I can't remember what the case is. Maybe we just called them cases, or I don't remember. Anyway, so they would take these blank shells, put them into this machine, and then this spooling machine that was made by this company, King. The King loader would take the spool and it would thread it into the cassette and splice it and then reel it, use the cassette to reel in. And you would set the machine, you'd say, this lecture is this length. And so it'd spool in the exact to the second length that cassette needed to have in it. And then it'd splice it and then it'd put it in there. And so then after all that was done, you got to have a quality control after that, because if the guy running the King loader puts in the wrong time, it's going to chop the lecture in the middle. So you got to listen to the beginning, you got to listen to the middle, and then you got to listen to the end. And what that person does is they have the same time the guy who made that original production master that they were using to copy, that's playing on the master machine and playing out to all the slaves. There's another copy that was made at the exact same time as that, and that's a 1/4-inch reference master. And that reference master we would have on a reel-to-reel machine, and then we had this Nakamichi cassette deck. I remember it to this day. It was a Nakamichi XL1000, I think it was called. Is it a DXL 1000? ZXL 1000. The Nakamichi ZXL 1000. And so you would play the original. You'd go 1, 2, 3, play the cassette. You'd cue it up exactly right. And then we had a switch on our headphones, and we could go A, listen to the master, B, then you listen to the cassette, A, and you go back and forth. And you look at the VU meters, the volume unit meters, you look at those and you'd see a peak when he said, and in this lecture, and then you'd see where it peaked. And then when you go into the copy and say, in this lecture, and then you'd see exactly where it peaked. And you would be comparing the A to the B. And so it's called doing an A-B. If you're in that industry, it's kind of a way you check things. Okay, we did that for every single pancake. We did the check I did to computer analyze the frequencies using a spectrum analyzer and a VU meter, and all these things have to be is perfectly calibrated to make sure everything's good. And the machine that I checked the pancakes on was made by a company called Studer, and it was a A80 QC cassette Studer. Just this tape machine that I was checking was a $35,000 tape machine that I was playing the pancakes on, and it was heavily modified to be able to play everything exactly the way they wanted. Anyway, so then they would check they would do an A-B of the cassettes. And then once every single pancake passed my station, and every single pancake, this was called the audible QC. So one is pancake QC. That was my job. And then it would go to the next QC, which was audible QC. And the person who was the audible QC was my boss. Her name was Linnea. And Linnea used to be in the CL office in RTC, and she got busted, and then she went into the tapes department at the same time I did. She wasn't there when I got there. She was busted out of RTC after I got there, and then assigned to be my boss. And she was a nightmare for me, because here I am. I'm a brand new Sea Org member. I'm a teenager. I want to say I was 17 at this point. I just had my birthday when I got to the Imp base. I got there like a day or two after my birthday, or a few days after my birthday. I was 17 years old, and she was in her like late 20s, but she was in Religious Technology Center. So she was in the highest Sea Org organization directly under David Miscavige, but also she got busted. So if somebody in RTC gets in trouble and they get assigned to Golden Era Productions, they sort of have to prove themselves as the best Sea Org member they can be. So they're very strict and very by the book according to L. Ron Hubbard policies and flag orders and all these other things. And here I am like, whatever, what are you gonna do? And she would have none of it. Anyway, so she was my boss, and she was the tapes QC. And I was the pancake QC, and I also did audible QC, and she was the day shift pancake QC, held from above. If you in the Sea Org, if you do a job that's under you, you do that job HFA, held from above. So she was the day shift pancake QC, and then she was also the audible QC, and then I was the night shift pancake QC. And then I became what was called Quality Control Gold, and I was the QC over all of Golden Era Productions, including Linnea, which was kind of weird in the end. But so what had happened after you left was, and also when it was funny when I would write to somebody that wasn't at Golden Era Productions, because if I would write to somebody that I needed something from Los Angeles, it would be from Pancake QC, Golden Era Productions. People are like, wow, international headquarters must be amazing. They got people checking their pancakes for them to make sure they're like, what, got enough maple syrup on them or something? It's just like it's a so out of context thing. Right. And even people at the base would be like, what do you Pancake do? QC, you here? And I'd be like, yep, right here, Pancake QC, It was the most bizarre Sea Org post title ever. And oh, by the way, anybody out there wondering, I have quality checked a pancake or two in my time. Not the tape ones. Not the tape ones.
Anyway, I want to move. Go ahead.
This
up, and I was going to move on to something else. I was going to ask. Okay, so I left because I was like, I'm out of here. I had seen all the abuse. I worked closely with Miscavige. I was gone, and of course, you're just fresh-faced, green behind the ears, arrived, right? So we kind of passed in the night, right? But I wanted to ask you a question. Okay, again, this is from your book, right? This is a picture. I was going to add this picture here. This is what Miscavige looked like in '91, around the time that I left and you were there.
Well, that's from the Ted Koppel interview. Right. That picture,
right?
ABC Nightline.
I want to ask you a question, okay?
Yeah.
I know because you worked around Miscavige for years, right?
Yeah.
There's always a point where he considers that you're somebody that can get things done, right? In other words, like somebody is somebody I can depend on. And I want to ask you, when was that for you? When did he go like, give it to Headley, he'll take care of it or whatever? Because he does that. And it's always, it's not like that at first. At first, he gives you a lot of grief and all that. But when did he actually start relying on you to get things done?
Well, I want to say we did this whole place where we worked, it was in the manufacturing area, but everybody knew it as the Gauss line.
Right.
That's what everybody called it. Oh, you going to the Gauss line? Oh, the Gauss line flap. Oh, they still haven't gotten the Gauss line up. Everybody just called it as the Gauss line. That's what it was always called. Even though that's just the manufacturer name. It's like Q-tip or Kleenex. It's just like, oh, that's the Gauss line. Okay. It had been down for months and months and months before I got there. Right. And I got there in May. And I was actually the very first person to arrive when I got there. There was one other guy that had been there, but he was working in what was called the finishing area, which is like the packaging area and where they shrink wrap stuff and put the cassettes inside the binders.
Tony Cifarelli?
It was Dan Cricini was the guy that had arrived before me. And he was a very decorated Sea Org veteran. He'd been in the Sea Org for 20 years in Los Angeles. And he was promoted, and he was an officer and everything. I remember I was always like, oh, this guy's, he's got a mustache. He's pretty old, Anyway, but
I hadn't even started shaving yet.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. I was literally like, didn't even have any hair on my balls when I showed up at this joint. Anyway, so Dan Cricini was there. He was in finishing, and I was actually going to be in finishing. That was what they had picked for me. And then they found out, oh, this guy knows electronics and stuff like that. And so it was decided, oh, no, he should actually be in the Gauss line proper, where the equipment is, where the technical equipment is. And so there was a bunch of technicians, Bob Ferris, Bruce Plotz, a guy named Gary Lou, who was also known as Luigi. And Luigi was a genius. So was Bob, and so was Bruce.
Self-taught.
Yeah.
Self-taught genius, yeah.
I think Bruce might have actually been the smartest of all of them. But Gary Lee was, he could design audio circuits and modify existing ones and troubleshoot.
He built
and so
from scratch, he built equipment.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And Bob Ferris was the technician that was assigned to the Gauss line. He was his post title was the tapes technician, and he was newly put there. He was actually before that. I think he was an auditor. He was in the qualifications department. He was a counselor who had just happened to know some stuff about audio. So like, oh, we should put him in there as a technician. So it was him, Gary Lou, and Bruce Plotz just hunched over these machines, circuit boards out, testing all day, all night. And this had been going on all the way up until I got there. And it was Bruce and Gary, and they were trying to fix it, and they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't. We had a guy named Jeff Campbell that was like a Scientologist, but he was a technician, and he was there trying to help us figure it out. And because I was
John McCormick involved? Do you remember?
John McCormick was really more of the meter guy.
Yeah.
E-meters. He did every once in a while. They'd ask him ideas and stuff because we were doing something that had never been done before.
Right.
The machines themselves.
You were exceeding the factory specifications.
Yeah, the machines themselves could they could reproduce a quality signal, but not as tight as David Miscavige wanted it. So in the end, and this is the funniest thing. In the end, they had figured out how to get the circuit board to do what we wanted, but tuning it was the problem. And it was very rookie stuff that was happening. And essentially what it boiled down to in the end, this is the stupidest thing, but this is what it was. It was the temperature of the room. That was it. The temperature of the room was the problem. They had they'd gotten these, they had moved. This Gauss line had been operating for years and years and years in another location.
Right.
Well, they built this brand new building. It had fancy new air conditioning. Right. And anyone in the electronics world where you want to keep that in the 70s, low 70s or below. And so they had this place on 69 all the time. And that's what it was, just cold in there. Yeah. Well, they would open these windows, those windows that I showed you that you put up, those three little windows in that manufacturing building. They'd have those blinds open right there. Those ones right in the middle, those three ones on the first floor that are blocked. Okay. Those, the sun would come in. Mm-hmm. And it'd heat everything up. And then we do all these tests. We do all these frequency. We just had tones. We're just recording. We had a master tape that just had tones, and that was just playing full time. And it was going out to the slaves. And what would happen is we would tune the slaves to that tone. We'd make sure it matched. And if this frequency was high, there was a little thing you could adjust, and you could change. You couldn't change individual frequencies, but you could change like the low frequencies, you could change the mid frequencies, and you could change the high frequencies. And you just had a little potentiometer that would either make those go up or down. And so we'd spend the whole day tuning everything, getting it all perfect, all into the night. And like till like 6 o'clock in the morning. And then we get everything perfect. And then we go to bed for a few hours. We get up, 8:30, come in, and everything would be totally different. And no one could figure it out. And so what you had was you had the air conditioner itself just being colder or hotter, and then you'd have the sun and just the outside temperatures affecting everything. And then it was also maybe we had to move a bunch of tape in, and so we'd prop the doors to the Gauss line open into the finishing area where the loading dock was connected to and all that. And we'd be bringing a bunch of stuff in. And then all of a sudden, all the slaves on that side of the room would have a totally different tuning.
Wow.
And so it really took about, I'm going to say it took about August or September, maybe, for them to really figure that out. It took months for them to go, oh, it's the temperature. And we put all these thermometers all around the room. And then they ended up just ripping out the air conditioning system that was part of the building. And they put in a very, very special air conditioning system just for that room. And then once we did that, then you could just say, okay, here's our baseline. We're always going to have it at this temperature. Now let's tune everything. And then we were able to do it. And then eventually we were able to figure it. It was very funny. So what they would do is it's kind of like a dog and pony show to fix these machines, because you have to run the master, then run the slave, then take the tape off the slave, go check it on the QC Studer, and then you'd be like, oh, it's a dB too high. And then they'd hook up this whole test rig to the slave, get the tape rolling, and then they had a way they could play it back right after it was being recorded on the slave itself. And then they would adjust this little thing until it would be like, okay, that's a dB lower, 1 decibel lower. And they'd be like, okay, good. Take all that off of the slave. Now let's run a test, then bring it over to me, and then I would test it. Well, just to tune one slave could take 2 or 3 hours, because when you tweak it and then it goes too far, then you're like, okay, we do all that, put the thing back on, test it, run a test, be like, oh, now it's 2 dBs too low. You'd be like, and so you would just do that. And then after 2 hours, it'd be like, okay, that one's pretty good. It's pretty flat. It's like almost no deviation, plus or minus, across all those frequencies, which is almost impossible to achieve. Anyway, but I don't remember why this was a thing, but I think David Miscavige was like, you got to tune these things every day. You don't really. If they're good and they're in the range, then they should just stay that way. But for some reason, we were over tuning these things, and the tuning took forever. And if a slave wasn't good, then we couldn't use it. And so it would just be down. And so out of the 16 slaves, maybe there was only 8 slaves that would just always stay tuned. And these other ones just wouldn't for some reason. They would wildly fluctuate. So, and it would take forever to tune them. And so it was sort of like by the time you got all of them working, then the ones that were already working would now be going out of tune. And they just wouldn't stay, or I don't remember exactly what it was. But because it took so long to test and find and tune them, I was like, why do you get all this equipment when you're tuning it? If it says it's a little high, just tweak it down a little bit and then run another test right away. Like it takes 1 minute to run a test. Let me check it. If it's too high, just tweak it down and then do another test. And they're like, but how do you know how much you're tweaking it down? And I would argue, well, you don't know how much you're tweaking down because you always overcompensate. And we always end up going too high, too low, too high, too low. And then you do the next frequency range, too high, too low, too high, too low. And so I invented this thing called blind tweaking, which is if it's a little high, then tweak it down just a little teeny bit, like a hair, just a little hair. And so if I was checking one and it was too high, or even if it was just, it wasn't too high to be a flunk, but it looked like it might be creeping up a little bit, then I would just tweak it down. Like, why don't you tweak it before it's out of range? And so I just started tweaking the slaves willy-nilly. When these guys had this whole procedure and you had to hook this up, I was just like, fuck that. This is all bullshit. I'm going to go in there and just blind tweak it. And then slowly, over a period of days, all the slaves were fine. And they were all kind of like in their zone and everything was fine. And then we could run. Well, the whole purpose, David Miscavige says, they need to be able to produce 50,000 cassettes every single week. And I don't know how he came up with that figure, but it was sort of like mathematically, if everything went 98% right, with every single step of the line, and nobody went to dinner and nobody took a dump and nobody did anything except for run this thing, it was a miracle to get 50,000 a week. And he wouldn't consider it fixed until it did the 50,000 a week. So even though we were producing cassettes for months and months, like I want to say in like end of September, October-ish, we were cranking out cassettes on a regular basis. We'd do 40,000, we'd do 25, but we could never do 50,000. We could never do 50,000. And he wouldn't say that everything was fixed until we did that 50,000. Right. And Thanksgiving of 1990, that week in Scientology, the weekends on Thursday, that Thursday of Thanksgiving in 1990, we produced over 50,000 cassettes. And David Miscavige made a big deal out of it. And the whole base was in these things called lower conditions, which is like a punishment zone. We had a flood in August and it destroyed a ton of the property. Right. And he assigned everybody on that property that was a Sea Org member, he assigned them a condition of confusion, which is the lowest possible condition you can be in Scientology. In order to get up out of the conditions, you have to do these things called formula, and people have to approve it and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, but in Thanksgiving of 1990, we produced 50,000 cassettes, and then the whole entire property was approved to be not in lower conditions. So that's how big of a deal this little area with like 10 people in it is the entire property was being punished because we could not make 50,000 cassettes in a week. And the most ridiculous thing in the end of all this is that they sold about 1,000 cassettes a week the entire time I was there. So you were
stocking shelves.
You think those dudes before us, they wasted $300,000 because the cassettes were bad? We produced millions of cassettes that were never sold. Right. And they had to trash them in the end because the entire thing is taking place in 1990. CDs had been out for a decade. A decade CDs had been around. And these guys we're basically like hot rodding Model A's. Okay. Yes. We're hot rodding Model A's. Like, you can go just buy a Dodge Charger for a lot less time and money, and you'll go fast in that Model A.
And that's the insanity of David Miscavige. It's like he always was, way behind the times of what's going on. I mean,
D-
CDs were just happening, and we're trying to put out these TDK metal tapes. As a matter of fact, the photographs that I showed you
Yeah.
of the Gauss line, this equipment here,
Yeah.
I showed this stuff to you, right?
Yeah.
These photos, when I found them, I had to look them up on Google. They
Yeah.
came from the Museum of Magnetic
Yes.
Recording. They don't
Yeah.
even use them anymore.
No. Even when we were doing all this, it was sort of like, what are you guys up to? Like, you could have a CD. Oh, and that's the other thing. These things cost $1 to produce. They're selling them for $75 each, these lectures. That's about the average cost of an L. Ron Hubbard cassette or lecture. It's about $75. You can produce a CD for less than a penny. And
Yeah, and the thing is that Miscavige had a CD player in his officer's lounge. It was the top of the line, state of the art CD player in his officer's lounge on his personal stereo.
yeah,
and
I remember
those, right?
It was those Technique ones where the top popped up and you would place it. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, this dude, I mean, everything's on the internet now. You can watch anything you want on a computer, phone, tablet. This dude just bought a TV studio. He just bought an like a TV station a few years ago. Like, dude, what's wrong with you?
After we left, you were still there. They built a film lab,
yes.
obviously because they didn't want to, sending everything to Los Angeles for the rushes to be printed and brought back. And then they were like, we're going to film color separate. I remember the planning before this was built to save L. Ron Hubbard's crappy films.
Yeah.
We're going to separate. So they built a state-of-the-art film laboratory for millions of dollars on that property. And then they don't even shoot on film anymore. They're using digital cameras and stuff like that. It's a complete waste.
Well, even the fact that we spent millions and millions of dollars on producing these cassettes, which I'm going to say 90% of it was waste. Like, when we would make these sets of lectures, we would produce, like, let's say a L. Ron Hubbard lecture set has 20 lectures in it. So that's 20 cassettes. We have a binder that holds 10 cassettes on this side, then 10 cassettes on this side, and a big, thick transcript of all the lectures and a glossary and all this stuff.
They were packaged very nicely.
Yeah, but now here's a key thing. A lot of Scientologists don't know this. And I bet you if they knew this, they'd be like, what? When we produce those lecture sets, you know how many we would produce? We would produce 1,500. That was the amount we would produce. 1,500. Scientology is saying they have 10 million members. And when they have an international release of a lecture thing, we've produced 1,500 copies of that lecture series. And sometimes we'd go wild and we'd produce 5,000 and they'd sell 300. And then those 4,700 would just sit around. Or they'd sell them to the Scientology organizations. Like, they'd say that 1,500, they'd divide that into all the Scientology. So like, this organization has to buy 5 and this one has to buy 6 and this one has to buy 10. And so they'd suck up that 1,500 and then we'd produce another 1,500. So we had some in case they needed some more. And, a lot of times we'd never run out of that second batch of 1,500. Like, they wouldn't have sold the first batch, and maybe 1 or 2 ones here or there would order new ones. So it was sort of like David Miscavige picked that 50,000 figure based on how much the machine could make, not how much his machine could sell. And that is actually how he does everything. He says, oh, well, we can't get Scientology to expand because the organizations are crappy and they're in a strip mall or whatever. And they may be pumping 100 people through that little strip mall location a week. And so they raise $10 million. 20 years later, they're in this big, giant ex-museum of a facility and they're pumping 10 people through a week now. And you're like, you would have been better off in the strip mall next to the dog groomer. You were doing just fine back then.
And the thing is that, you know, it wasn't just Miscavige. L. Ron Hubbard also was a complete audiophile, if you will.
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
All the equipment and the production lines at Golden Era Productions, audio wise, I oversaw and had to set up. I had no background in it whatsoever, but I got people like Gary Lew and John Horowitz and Steve Marlowe and all these, Ken Mortensen, these people to set these things up. Why? And Hubbard, really high quality. And they were really high quality, but they wasted millions of dollars on this stuff, right? He produced this album. It's one of the crappiest albums or music you've ever heard in your life, called The Power of Source, The Apollo Stars. And that's him over there sitting next to Dan Arbach, recording the stuff. And Miscavige was the same way. Miscavige had to have what, a couple $100,000 personal stereo QC line in his officer's lounge, right?
He has that in every single country,
right?
And
and
every single location. Yeah,
no,
that he has.
We had to set that stuff up. It was ridiculous, you know.
Yeah, he has. I want to say David Miscavige has over $10 million of personal office equipment
Audio
between his various offices, just in terms of the equipment to just play back cassettes or play back CDs or play back a DVD. He might have a $200,000 speaker system in that office. And that's not the tape player and the cassette and the TV. No, I'm just talking about the amps and the speakers. That's $200K per office. And he's got UK, the Freewinds, RTC, OSA or HGB, ASI, LCDs, SPTV, KCET or whatever they call the SMP, Scientology Media Productions. Anyway, he has and this is sort of like his hobby horse in Scientology and the Sea Org.
Mark, you don't know this, but one of our duties was if he was going to the officers' lounge, we would have to go down there 15 to 20 minutes before to turn on the amps, because there were tube amps, because they had to heat up.
They need to warm up.
Listen to these things. So that was one thing. He's going to go down to the officers' lounge. We've got to go down and turn on those amplifiers.
Were those Manleys back then?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And that guy, that's a whole nother story. Well, I could literally tell you 10 hours of stories just about the Manly equipment and how Scientology reverse engineered and ripped off Manly and made their own copycat stuff. But regardless, it was ridiculous. And even to this day, like, they just bought a TV station and they have a TV channel on DirecTV that is just playing videos that they have on their website. It's ridiculous. And I don't know how much they're paying DirecTV for that. And Scientology's not getting anybody into Scientology through their DirecTV channel. And if they are, it's not worth $1 million a person that they're getting in.
I want to move on just because we're moving along here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about your book, because like I said, I listened to your book on audio. Okay. I read your book when it first came out in 2008 or 9, whenever it was. It was fantastic. But I want to refresh myself. So I saw, it's on audio. So this summer I got it. And you actually, the thing I love about audiobooks, and I listen to it in the car all the time, is because it's like you're sitting in the front seat with me, telling me these stories, and you did an awesome job recording the book. But I wanted to ask you, even before that, in writing the book, you didn't even complete high school. Did you write this book all by yourself, or did you have somebody help you? Because it's so well written. I just want to compliment you on how well written
I appreciate
Alone for Good is.
Well, and that was my main hang up on doing the book, was that I'm pretty sure if you want to write a book, you should have at least read a book. I've read Call the Wild, or like White Fang or something, but I'm not didn't read a lot, and what little I did read was Hubbard, because that's, you have to in the Sea organization. Right. And I've read a lot of equipment manuals. I don't exactly know how to explain it, but I have some form of a photographic memory. So if I'm reading something, as long as I just see the page, then I'm good. I don't have to sit there and go through all of it. I just like chink, chink. It's kind of like I'm just scanning it. And so that's the sort of thing I would do with equipment manuals and stuff like. So I could just scan through the whole thing and be like, okay, good. I know, like the Matrix, you just flip through it and you're like, okay, good. I know how to work this. And then and that's what I did with all that equipment at Golden Era Productions.
Yeah, because it's not easy stuff to read those manuals. No. And you obviously duplicated it because you know how to do everything with it.
Yeah,
you know?
I had to use the equipment. So I couldn't, it wasn't like one of those things like you could fake it. I had to use it all day, every day.
There's no crib notes version of it.
And the other thing is, no one at when I got that equipment to do the quality control, no one at Golden Era Productions had ever read that manual before. So,
right.
So even when I read it, I was like, okay, in Scientology, you have to read a manual, then you have to get a checkout. Somebody else who's read the manual I couldn't get a checkout because nobody had ever read it. So it was like, it was sort of a weird thing. Like, hey, did you get a checkout? I'd be like, no, I can't get one. And they're like, why not? I'd go, no one's read it. And then they would be like, and every person that tried to read it would end up just buried in a dictionary for 2 days. And they were like, if you know how to use it, you know how to use it. Anyway, but so when I wrote the book, it was a lot of, the idea was all these things that I had posted on the internet for 4 years, we would take those and then just make them into a book. And every time I would look at one of those, I would be like, well, I only wrote that because I was putting it on the internet. I would make it longer if I would tell the whole story, what happened before, what led up. And so then I just said, you know what? And Claire and I had discussed it, and she said, I'll figure out how to make the book. You just write it. Okay. And I was like, okay. And she had a book like, how to self-publish a book, or, how to do this. And so I'm just writing away. I was like, I'm going to start at the beginning when we moved to California, when I was a little kid, when I was 5 or whatever it was. Yeah. And I'm just going to go up to when we got out. And it was about 1,000 pages. It was just the whole thing. And then she's reading these books and she goes, yeah, it can't be more than 400 pages. I was like, what? She goes, yeah, your first book needs to be less than 400 pages. And I was like, well, okay. So we threw away half the book. Yeah. To make it into whatever it is. It's like 398 pages. I don't even have a copy of it right here. But either way, I would go back we lived in Burbank. And we had a house, and in the back of the house there was like a little like a garage that had been turned into an office, and in there it had a little recording studio, and that was my office. And then Claire had what would be like the machine room or the equipment room where the mix board and everything would be. And I was in the vocal booth, and that was my office. And so I would just go back in my office, and I would just, every night when I got home from work, kind of like I do now, I would do my day, work, do my day job. And then when I get home, have dinner with Claire and the kids. And then I'd go back into my office and I'd crank out a chapter. And I just did that every single day.
Every day. Yeah.
And every day I would just write a chapter. And sometimes I'd write 3 or 4 chapters. Like I'd stay up until 8 o'clock in the morning and just be like,
you've been on a roll.
Because once you're back in that world, it's easy. And for me, because when I'm remembering something, I'm just playing back a video in my head that happened. So I can remember almost all the dialogue, and I just go back, just transport myself back to that time, or back to when this happened or what that happened. And I can just sit there and download that into words. I can just keep going over it and writing. Oh yeah, then didn't this? Who was that? Oh, that was John Stumpke. And I don't know why I remember the names, and I don't know why I remember faces and what people said.
I do too. Yeah. Yeah.
But for some weird reason, when I did this, up until 2009, I would have nightmares, like routine nightmares from getting like just waking up back there, or I'm in the supermarket and David Miscavige is pushing a cart with my kids and he's like, you lost the kids, just weird, just like, and I would have them so much that I wouldn't sleep, because I know if I fall asleep, I'm going to have these weird nightmares. And then I would get kind of depressed or just out of sorts. And it was just a weird time. And when I finished writing the book, I stopped having the nightmares. And I thought, that's the weirdest thing in the world, that just writing it made the nightmares stop. And so then I thought, there's something to this for me that makes it so that I don't have the nightmares. And I thought, how weird would it be if somebody else that was having some weird problem read my thing and somehow it could help them? And I was like, oh yeah, I totally got to do this. I wasn't even still sure that I was going to do the book, but somehow there was something to all this. And then Claire got the ISBNs and the design. And after I had written it all and sort of got it down to like 500 pages or something, a guy by the name of Dan Kuhn.
Yeah, I know
Dan Kuhn used to be at the Ent Base, and he, funnily enough, he edited a lot of the books that are now the L. Ron Hubbard books that you see that they have. He was the one who edited it, L. Ron Hubbard, and made it into these Scientology books. I thought, how funny would it be if I got that dude to edit my book? Because he edited the L. Ron Hubbard books. And then the person who designed my book is the same person who designed all the Scientology books.
Jeff Hawkins, right?
No, Jeff Hawkins did some stuff for us, but not that. Jeff Hawkins was more like a marketing guy. He did do some designs of some books, but the guy who did like the typesetting and the layout and stuff like that, his name was Kalahiki. Kalahiki is the one who did the design and he did the cover art and the cover and then the slipcase and the typesetting and all that stuff. And so, he read the book, and after he read the book, he made that the cover from the chapter. It starts out where they're chasing me the day of my escape from Scientology. I'm driving down the highway on a motorcycle and they're chasing me with the Nissan Pathfinder SUV, and they run me off the road while we're driving down the road. And so he wrote that, he drew that, he took some artistic license on the motorcycle. That's not exactly how my Yamaha TWT 200 looks in real life. But I was like, it's a cover of a book. Let him be. But the funny thing is the picture of the SUV is from a picture of that SUV. This Scientology Sea Org security SUV. That is that actual SUV. So the guy that edited L. Ron Hubbard's books edited it. The guy who designed and did the typesetting and the glossary and all that, he did it. And then we had a friend of mine that used to work at the Ent Base, and his wife was like a real estate agent, and she was going to college to get her master's in something. And I said, hey, can you do me a favor and read this? It had already been gone through by Dan, and then it was gone through by her. And I said, could you read this and tell me what you think? And for the most part, she was like, it's amazing. I really like it. there's a lot of lingo in there.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah. And I always kind of thought that doing a glossary was like a Scientology type thing. And then I realized, well, yeah, because they're using so much lingo that you can't even understand what's going on without a glossary.
Right.
And to some extent, there is a bit of that in there. So we added a glossary, and it was sort of like, oh, this is helpful. And then the only other thing that she said was it was hard to kind of picture where some of the things were and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. And so we didn't take out the lingo. And the reason I didn't want to take out the lingo was because the people that I want to read there's two people that I want to read the book. People that are in Scientology and people that are maybe thinking or interested in getting into Scientology.
Right.
And then if you're just somebody who wants to know about crazy shit, then you can read it too. But it's really for those two people. I want to inoculate anyone who's like having some ideas, like maybe this is a good one. Maybe, read this and then maybe think about it. And then if somebody was in Scientology, if they read it, because in Scientology, there's a lot of stuff that happens, whether you're in the Sea Org or whether you're a civilian Scientologist, there's a lot of things that happen and they don't tell you. Like,
the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
But you know something happened with somebody.
Right, but you don't know why.
And when you ask, you're either going to get in trouble for asking because you really, who cares what happened to that guy?
You don't
That's
have
nothing
the rank
to do with
to
you.
ask about that.
Yeah, you don't have the rank to ask where's Shelley. But then even if they're just like, I want to know about this place called the Int Base or the International Headquarters or Golden Era or whatever, you can't find out what goes on there. There's no place that tells you that. And for me, I was like, the worst I could be doing is just documenting it. Like it happened, here it is. This is my story. And if it helps somebody by reading it or they get some questions answered, or maybe they have a relative that works at this place, I might talk about them in the book, which was the case for at least, I want to say 10 people wrote me saying, hey, I just read your book. Linnea is this, or Lyman Spurlock is my cousin, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten a lot of
We get that on our channel. We get that on our channel.
Totally.
We tell stories, the historical stuff, and people go, "Oh, that's my brother," or "That's my." We get that. Yeah.
It's kind of weird that person will find out more about their relative from us than from their relative.
From them. Yeah, exactly.
But
the other thing I was going to say is that what you're doing. I mean, what you were talking about earlier about the nightmares, stuff like that. We call it peeling the onion on our channel. Which, by the way, people subscribe to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. I'm just joking, but anyway. But no, I mean, you get rid of it. Do you know what I mean? It goes away.
Yeah.
Just because you've been looking at it, and it's very helpful. And reading your book has the same effect. You know what I mean? I had the same thing with Barefaced Messiah, written by Russell Miller. It completely changed my point of view on things. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, when I watched the South Park episode, I want to say that sort of deprogrammed me from the Scientology aspect. Like, I know those guys are bullshit from watching South Park because I was there and I know what happened. But then when I see the South Park episode and they tell the OT3 secret Xenu and body thetans and all that, I'm like, that's the thing they were not telling us. That was it. Like, I was sort of like, oh, this is a bunch of bullshit. And also, at the Int Base, there are people that are OT8 at the Int Base. They have them. That's the highest operating thetan level you can achieve in Scientology. And these people couldn't organize themselves out of a wet paper bag. And haven't even read Dynamics. I could run circles around these people in my sleep. I could run circles around these guys. So when I found out Like that always never made sense to me. Like
Right.
I don't want to become that. So it was never really, I never really thought that doing the OT levels was going to make me better, because those guys had already done it and I'm already better than them. I'm better right now. And I don't know anything about Scientology.
Right.
So so I almost thought like whatever they're doing, they're making people worse. They're not making them better. They're certainly, maybe they're not making them worse. Maybe those people were flat ball bearings before and now they're just maybe a little rounded. But the fact that it wasn't, I'd never met an OTA that I was like, that guy's a rock star.
Yeah, exactly.
That guy is amazing. And even if you go like, there was, I want to say maybe there was 10 of these OT8s that are at the property. All 10 of them, just not impressed at all.
Right.
All 10, every single one of them. And then there were maybe 100 people that were OT6 or OT7 or OT5. And those guys were okay, but still like, you know, the sun's not shining out of their backside. They're not rock stars. They might be capable people, but nothing like, I'm not sure that's what made them that. So when I saw the South Park episode, that sort of was like, oh, I get it. That the thing those guys learned about was this. They learned about the space cooties. How is learning about space cooties supposed to help you out in the real world? I mean, if you're fighting space cooties, sure, good to be educated. But if you're not, it's sort of like that's useless information for the rest of us. So either way, when I wrote the book, I thought if you could just answer people's questions about this, like they're gonna know this is what happened to this guy who did it. Maybe there'll be a different outcome for other people, but this guy, it didn't work out too good for him. And I've done fine since I left Scientology. I really don't feel like the first few years was sort of like it was hard, but I had Scientology on my back the whole time and it was hard. So then I thought, if I can like just kill it and just do amazing in the real world, and I've got those guys trying to push me down the whole time, I'm like, imagine if they weren't, how amazing I could be doing. So I was sort of like, yeah, I don't need them. I don't care what they do. You just ignore them. And every time I try to not mess with them, like there's been many times where I'm just like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm sick of talking about Scientology. And I had sort of announced that to a lot of people like Mike and just people we knew. I was just like, I'm doing my thing. I'm killing it in my industry, and I'm doing amazing projects, and I'm getting more and more and more and more of them. And the less I have to do with this Scientology stuff, the better for me professionally. So
let me ask you. I was going to show you this picture because it just kind of fits in with what you're talking about here, right? What did you think about when you saw this picture?
Well, okay, I thought that's pretty good, but to be fair,
that's Leah Remini, okay?
Yeah, she was doing a show called Dancing with the Stars, and where they do these rehearsals.
She's holding a copy of Marc's book, and this is a paparazzi photo.
Yeah, and this is when she first was getting out of Scientology. And I'm trying to say this without not giving any. Regardless, she hadn't yet done anything or wrote a book or said anything. It was just kind of like rumblings that I think Leah left Scientology. And that was sort of what was going around. And she called me. She didn't call me. She talked to somebody else, and that person was calling me and was asking me all these questions. And it wasn't somebody that I would normally talk to or that I even really knew, but they were a very, very famous Scientologist. Mm-hmm. And that person was asking me questions, and I was sort of like, wow, this is really weird. Why is this person talking to me? And also, why are they asking me these things? And then at a certain point, they were like, oh, I'm going to send this to somebody, and they're going to probably end up calling you. And I was like, okay. And again, I don't really have a big weird thing with celebrities because Tom Cruise was auditing me and Nicole Kidman was there. And also, I grew up in Hollywood. So I'm sort of like, yeah, they're just doing a job. They're not, they're taking shits on the same toilet you're taking shits on. They're just a person. Anyway, so then when Leah finally did call me, I'm like, oh, I'm going to send you a copy of my book. And then I thought, oh no, I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send you multiple copies. And I told her, I said, hey, throw our brother a bone. And maybe, you know, go to the Ivy and have Ivy's like a famous restaurant in LA where Scientology celebrities used to be.
Hang out, yeah.
Paparazzi hang out there.
Paparazzi outside, right.
I don't even know if it's still a thing, but
it is. Go ahead.
I was like, maybe you can go to the Ivy and just have a copy of my book sitting on the table or something like that. And she laughed, and I thought, okay, well, whatever. Anyway, and then all of a sudden, somebody sends me a message like, dude, I just looked on TMZ, and there's a copy of Leah with your book. And I was just like, nice. Anyway, but the book had been out for, you know, years and years and years by the time she did that. And but
she hadn't read it. She hadn't really read it yet, though, had she? Or
I don't actually know. I'm pretty sure she read it. And the funny thing about Leah,
I would imagine that it really opened her eyes because somebody like her wouldn't know what was happening at the international base.
No,
you paint that picture so well in the book that it had to be really eye-opening for her.
Yeah, and I also talked about Ray Midoff and Mark Ingber and Mark Yeager and David Muscat. So if you were in Scientology and you were a celebrity, you knew who I was talking about. So, and also it's very nuts and bolts, my book. You know, you think we talked about all that boring audio stuff in here. There's a lot of boring audio stuff in there, too, because I'm just telling you, this is what I know. This is what I did. Yeah. This is how it went down. This is the equipment I used. And I'm just like rattling it off. People are like, we don't care that it was a Hewlett Packard 400 FL. Right. It could have been you could have just said analyzer. Anyway, but the
understood, though.
Yes. The funny thing about Leah was that when she was talking to me, she was like, well, why didn't you write a knowledge report? And that's off policy. And I was like, Leah, you're so naive. I was like, all that, write a KR, that's for you as a Scientologist. It's a do as we say, not as we do. At the international headquarters, they don't give a shit about L. Ron Hubbard policy. That's like, whatever. We're trying to get shit done. That is not going to help. Doing all that old fuddy-duddies nonsense just slows shit down. It doesn't increase production usually.
Let me show you one more picture, and also I want to ask you another question too. The first thing I want to ask you a question about from your book, and then I want to show you this picture. You know, you tell the story about Miscavige hitting you, right? And did he knock your glasses off or whatever? I get asked this question all the time because he physically attacked me. Yeah, they always ask, why didn't you fight back? I get asked that all the time.
Well, and I tell in the case of you,
I'd like to get you.
Yeah. Well, in the case of me, he did hit me. He was literally just like wailing on me. He was so mad at me, and he's punching me. And I did have glasses at the time. I would always say this: I had glasses at the time. Well, now I've got glasses again. So whatever. My LASIK finally wore off. Excuse me. Anyway, so he punched me in the face several times. And when he did that, my glasses actually got broken. So they broke, and I think one of the lenses popped out or something like that. But I picked up my glasses, kind of like shook myself off, and it was in that finishing area is where this took place. So right as you walked through those swinging red doors from the Gauss line to go into finishing, it was right there on the other side of those doors. And we were in finishing, and he had ordered me months and months before to get this area rebuilt. And he said, how much is it going to be to rebuild? And I want a whole proposal. And I spent weeks and weeks with Russ Bellin from the Church of Spiritual Technology and Tom DeVocht, who was pricing all the construction. And we came up with what it was going to take. It was going to cost $5 million. And he was like, you are unbelievable. It's just toys, toys, toys. You should want to buy this and you want to buy that. And I got taken off post. I was the producer, Gold, and I got taken off post. He demoted me. And he made me the director of audiovisual manufacturing, which is the post over the area that I was supposed to redesign and get rebuilt.
Yeah, right.
So instead of being the producer over all of Goldner Productions, he made me the head of the department that I had failed to design and rebuild
properly
for $5 million. That was unacceptable. Okay, well, there was months in between the demotion and this day. Fast forward many, many months later, David Miscavige, when I failed the design proposal, because I gave him one for $5 million, he himself did the design, according to him. And but it took him like a year. And for me to produce the amount of lectures and printed materials and CDs and DVDs that he had listed, in order to do it in the time frame that he wanted, those machines, I did the same thing he did with the Gauss line. What's the throughput of these machines? And what's the time frame that how many days, if it works, will it take to produce that list? And then you just make the equipment numbers match that. So if you need 10 copy machines to do that, and each machine costs $100,000, okay, you need $1 million in printers, right, or whatever it was. Anyway, he took a year doing his design, and then he spent $10 million on equipment.
Double what you were going to
He doubled it. Well, because he wasted a year of time not doing my design. So instead of getting $5 million of the equipment to produce it in 2 years, he bought $20 million of equipment to produce it in 1 year. And we were at the end of that year of getting all this stuff put together. And so when we were walking, we were almost done with everything, with all the printers and the new packaging and shrink wrappers and all this stuff. And as we're walking it through, he made this comment, which is like, yeah, this is how you do it. And I was like, you motherfucker. This is how you do it? Yeah, if you fuck around for a year or two and you double the budget, yeah, this is how you do it. And I sort of said that under my breath. Like I was so like, are you really kidding me right now? Yeah. Like, that's your story? Like, this is how you do it? You just doubled my proposal. What world do we live in? Anyway, so I was like, well, yeah, I think what I said was, well, yeah, you spend twice as much, you can get it done in half as much time. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, bitch, this is not rocket science. And that's when he punched me. And so he started punching me. And so I picked up my glasses, I kind of dusted myself off, and I was like, let's go. And when I did that, when I was like, let's do it, he fucking freaked out. And Greg Wilhare, and I can't remember who the other person was. It might have been Carlo Russo or Mike Sutter or somebody, just two dudes just picked me up and they carried me. Greg Wilhair is probably 6 foot something. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
He's not short.
He used to be a quarterback. No,
he used to be a quarterback. Yeah. So
for
him,
Villanova University. Yeah.
Yeah. So him and this other dude just picked me up and they just brought me outside. and as they were bringing me out, he looked to Larice and Shelley and said, "Did you see that? That guy was going to punch me." And as they're carrying me out, I was like, "Damn straight, Skippy." Like, I was like, fucking A, I was. You just punched me, bitch, for saying the exact thing that you did.
Right.
And so when that happened, and then I was pissed. I was literally like, you know how when you do something in the Sea Org and you overreact, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry."
Yeah,
whatever. You knew you did something you shouldn't have done. You're like, "Yeah, I'm a dick. I shouldn't have." I wasn't like that. I was like, no, he's the dick, not me. He's 100% the dick. And that was not a good thing to do. Because at that point, I was essentially, he knew that I didn't give a fuck.
Right.
And I've never myself seen somebody go like, "Let's do this."
Right.
So I was like, yeah. If you work for the Pope and you get in a fight with the Pope, probably not going to be working with the Pope anymore.
No, it's actually, if you really believe he's the Pope, which you're working for him and all that, it's difficult. It actually is upsetting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the thing that's funny is that I knew no one had done it because he looked to them and said, "Did you see that? That guy was going to punch me back." And it was like, yeah, that's how fights work in the real world, bitch.
And that's what I tell people. It's just that I didn't fight back, number one, because he always had an entourage. Like there were 10 people or 5 people around him. So I knew if I fought back, they would just pummel me or whatever. But the other reason I didn't do it is because I wanted them to all see how crazy he was, because he had never done that before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He'd never physically attacked, particularly somebody who worked for him, for years, in front of all these staff members. There were gold staff members and stuff. And I wanted them to see how crazy he was,
Yeah. And I remember when I wrote about it in my book.
Yeah, you were there.
I was there when he did that thing to you. And similarly, he had those 2 security guards with him. Mark Yeager was there. So there was 3 other dudes there. So if it was you on Dave, Mark's going to kick Dave's ass.
Yeah, I was bigger than he was. Yeah.
Yeah, much bigger. And also you were stocky. You were like big boned. You were like, he's going to get hurt. But there were 3.
I collapsed down. And
you were just like, he was just hitting you, and you were just ground. Like, no. Yeah. But I remember that he took his glasses off. That's how I knew, like
sunglasses. Yeah.
He planned it to the, like you were there. He walked in with those guys and he took his sunglasses off and he handed them to the guy next to him. And I was like, oh, he's fixing to do something. This is not just like I was of the impression he came there to do that. And when you were just being lippy, I think you wouldn't call him.
I talked back to him for the first time. No, I talked back to him.
But the best part is you called him Dave.
Yep.
You didn't say sir. You didn't say COB. You didn't say Mr. Miscavige. He was like, "What are you going to do, Mark? How are we going to deal with this?" And you're like, "I don't know, Dave. What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Oh, this is going down." Like he came there to fight and you were like, "Yeah, what's up, bitch?"
And the crazy thing was I was on a scissors lift up high, painting pipe. So I'm talking down to him. And immediately after I talked back to him, he's like, "Get down off of that lift." So I came down, got off, and then he went at me.
Yeah. And it was sort of one of those things where I was just sweeping over in the corner.
You were just arrived.
And I was like, time to be invisible. And I was just like, just watching this all go down in the corner, like a statue, just like, no one see me. I'm invisible. I'm invisible.
Yeah,
And
I had enough. I mean, like
yeah,
literally, you had just arrived. I've been
yeah.
putting up with this crap for 6.5 years,
It took
and I've
me,
known him since he was
yeah,
16. You
yeah.
know,
It took me 14 years from that time I saw him hit you.
yeah.
Took him 14 years before he got to the point where like, I'm going to gut this guy. And also, that was another thing I wanted to say. The whole time I was there, when I knew Dave, when I first got there, I was a teenager. So I was like a little scrawny guy. So it was almost unthinkable that would happen to me in 1990. But in 2004, I'm like 30 years old or something then. So it's like, okay, that's I'm
closer.
bigger.
Yeah, I was 31, so it's the same. Yeah.
Yeah. I was, 94. I was 31 too. Yeah. Cause it was 94. Yeah. I was born in 73. So yeah. Or maybe I had not turned either way. Yeah, David Miscavige, he only has the power because he has these entourage or these, or also, even if you just get into a 101 argument with him and you guys have a disagreement, well, you're just going to get interrogated for the next 5 months by other people. So even if they're not there with him, he can inflict pain and suffering on you by many, many other means that you would sort of like, I got to play nice with this guy. And also between 1990 and 2004, he became increasingly and more increasingly violent and erratic and psychotic. And,
well, that's why I tell people we saw it that you wouldn't have known because you just got there, but I dealt with it and seen him going spinnier and crazier and crazier and most staff did not see that. I worked with them every day, so I could see it. And that's when I went, this is done. If I can get my wife to leave with me, I'm leaving. And then I came back because she wouldn't leave with me. And then I finally just put my foot down and went, I'm out of here. I said, I'll be here with the cops if you don't give me my stuff, and I'm gone. And that's when they let me go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. You don't realize, you think when you're in the Sea Org, you think the Sea Org holds all the cards. If you know you can leave, and if they won't let you leave, you're like, oh, I'm just going to call police. They'll let you. They won't touch you. They will literally let you walk away, and you say, get my stuff ready. I'm coming back with the police tomorrow. They'll do it because they know they can't stop you from doing that. And I wish I would have known that when I was there, because I'm here escaping on a motorcycle. And as soon as the cops get involved, they're like, oh, he's gone. I was like,
well, and you wouldn't know because you were a teenager. You weren't even educated like on your civil rights, probably in the Constitution.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like all sorts of things that they violate, but had no idea,
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why Scientologists frown on a formal education, because you're going to learn about all the stuff that they can't do to you if you get a proper formal education. You'll be like, that's illegal. You'll be like, oh, really? I didn't know that. I grew up in there.
I got one last photo I want to show you. Then we'll answer questions, everybody.
Perfect.
So, and we don't have a lot, but we have some questions, so we'll do that. But I want to show you this photo. You came to visit. You were here for a convention in Las Vegas a few years ago, and we went out to dinner. You invited me to go with you to the Hard Rock and all that. Anyway, you said, oh, let's drive by the new Las Vegas Ideal Organization. He goes, let's go see if we can.
They had just built this
recently.
Yeah, they had just built this brand new organization, and it was in the middle of nowhere.
The worst place you could be. Anyway, and you go, oh, I'm going to go in there and take a picture. I do this all the time. I was scared. I was chicken. You know what? I was scared. I said, no, I don't want to do that.
It was so funny.
Here's the picture. You got a staff member to take that picture, right?
I got the person at the reception desk to take the picture. I would do this all the time. I would just go if I was in a city. And there was a new one of these ideal Scientology organizations, and it says right outside, everybody welcome. So I'm like, oh, I'm part of everybody. And then whenever I would go in there, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I was at Flag and I did this. And they'd be like, oh, and I'd be like, could you take a picture of me real quick? And every time I have one of me in Denver, I have one of me in Boston, at Las Vegas. Anytime I went anywhere, I would do it. And then I can't remember who. I think Claire told me, yeah, don't do that anymore. I was like, why? And she's like, I just don't like it. I'm not comfortable with it. And I'd be like, it's so fun to me that I'm this big bad SP. But if I just walk into your organization, you'll take a picture of me. But if you know who I am, well, then that gives me the power to be this SP. It's a weird thing in Scientology. They attach significances to things that changes everything. And if they just didn't do that, it would kind of just, I don't know. It's just weird.
Well, I found it was PTSD for me. I had a hard time walking around the complex. I mean, in Big Blue in Los Angeles, and you do it all the time and all that. But I did finally do it, but I was creeped out the whole time I was walking around. And the same thing, I didn't even want to go into the park. I did. I went in the parking lot of the York when you went in there. I've got the car going.
Oh, that's right. I said, hey, so that's right. We went there in your car. You picked me up. Yeah. So we drove there, and I was like, oh, let's go inside. And you were like, fuck that. I was like, well, we're just going to take a picture. And you were like, I am not getting out of this car. And I'm going to leave it running. And when you're running out, you were like my getaway driver. And I was like, it's not that big of a deal. We're just going into a building. And so I went in there, took the pic, and then I just came moseying out like, and I get in, and you're like, what happened? I'm like, oh, I got him to take a picture of me at the reception. And you're like, what? It's like, yeah, I do it all the time. It's kind of just a thing I do. Oh, I go back to the place where I was a prisoner for 15 years, and I just have fun in the lobbies.
Yeah, exactly.
But
anyway,
that was fun.
If you want to order Marc's book, you can purchase it at www.blownforgood.com. And it's in hardcover, paperback, audio, and Kindle versions. And the audio book is read by Marc personally, and it's fantastic. If you like listening
Thank you.
To him hear
I appreciate it.
You will enjoy the book immensely. It's really, really good. It's worth, even if you've read it, get the audio book and listen to it. You're going to have a great time doing so. But you can order it there. At his website, and they autograph too if you want, right, Marc? Don't you guys do autograph books?
Yeah, but all the ones we sell, if you go to the link in the description on our merch store, all the copies we sell are sold by myself and also Claire. I did want to say that I don't do this anymore. I don't go into the organizations. I haven't done it in probably over a decade. But the reason why I don't encourage people to do that is because I don't want somebody to get in trouble or get in a weird compromising position. And it was funny that you said that, because you said you go to the complex all the time. I actually did go to the complex all the time. When I lived in Los Angeles, I didn't even care. I would walk down the street, go to protests. We did this video documentary with this guy named Serge that the Aftermath Foundation helped.
Yeah. It's awesome.
And we drove over to the complex because that's where he had his accident. Was right there on L. Ron Hubbard Way. And when we were driving around, I got a little anxious, and I was kind of like, God, I haven't felt this this feeling of being anxious. Like, I've got to be very careful, and I've got to, and I realized it was because I had Serge with me. And I don't know what Serge's deal is. And I don't know if they do something, is he going to freak out? Is he going to have an episode, or is he going to get violent with them? And then that's where that unknown kind of comes in. If they come to me and they want to mess with me, I'm like, dude, I've done.
Hey, there's Ray Rodriguez. How you doing, bud? I haven't seen you in years.
Yeah, when I'm in Los Angeles, I've already beat the boss. I've already been all the way to the top and conquered that level. I beat the big boss. I'm not going to be worried about a low level, like a level 1 security guard. I've been to the top SP level 15 troll, David Miscavige. I've dealt directly with him for over a decade. So a security guard in Los Angeles, I'm sort of like, I know the laws. I know I'm not trespassing. I'm on a public street. you know, GTFO. We don't need to be having a conversation. But and that's sort of the funny thing about the hate websites they have about us and the ads they run and all the lies they tell. It's like, dude, we worked with the main guy. He did all that to our face. Sure, It sucks to have that stuff about on the internet, just lies and stuff about you. But if you know it's not true, then it's sort of like, yeah, okay, so there's somebody in Omaha that, who's Marc Headley? And they go, oh, who is marcheadley.com? That's probably going to tell me. And they see that I, you know, licked a bunch of crackers. It's like, okay, I'm sorry you had to read that, but pretty sure that didn't happen. But even if it did, that's what they got on me. I'm a cracker licker. It's ridiculous.
Anyway, we're going to do a giveaway. We got a merch giveaway on my site. So if you want to get in the chat, we're going to give away a coffee mug right here. Our Scientology stories, peeling the onion. G'day, mates. So we're going to give that away. So if you want to get in the chat, do that. But I wanted to mention as well, if you like the show, please subscribe to our channel. We're at 9,000, almost 9,300 subscribers, and we got a long way to go. But we'd like to get to 10,000 subscribers, so then we can do fundraisers and things too. So if you like this and you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. And
if you want a mug, do you say mug me? In ours, we do books.
Yeah.
You say book me. Do you say mug me? Mug me. Mug me.
Anyway, hit that like button, all that. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to Mark's channel, which most everybody I'm sure has, please subscribe to that as well.
Appreciate it.
Anyway, and then one other thing I wanted to mention too is I have a new channel that's just for fun. It's called Las Vegas Travel and More. I just started 2 weeks ago. I got 460 subscribers. So if you would, please subscribe to it. It's story, places to go, things to see in Las Vegas, great places to eat. Also, we're doing videos on, you know, different Janice's cruise voyage, things like that. But anyway, subscribe at MFisherLV, at MFisherLV. It's Las Vegas Travel and More. I'd appreciate it. It's just a little fun sort of hobby channel that I put together, so I would really appreciate it. Anyway,
that's nice.
We'll get into the chat here and do.
Well, do you want a mug? Do you want to throw a mug at somebody first, or you want to wait until we're done with the chat?
No, we'll do a mug now, and then we'll answer questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, this is the mug here, and anyway, if you want to get in the chat, Mark, and then if you like, you can do the countdown, and then I'll just.
You want me to pick?
You know, you just randomly count down from 5.
Oh, okay. 5, 4. Well, you know, I always joke around about this because some people watch on their phone, some people watch on an Apple TV or on a smart TV. And so I'm like, yeah, let them get in there. Let them take a few minutes to get in there. But sometimes we're doing a live, and there could be, you know, it could be a few thousand people in there. When those people start going on those comments, it's like, but yeah, that's good enough. If you've gotten enough time to get in there by now, I can see I have the chop popped out on another screen here.
Yeah, and 734 people are watching.
Oh wow, that's great. That's a good amount of people for just a Friday afternoon hang.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you want to count down, I'll just randomly pick somebody.
You ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. There you go.
Ann Ortiz. Mug me, Ann Ortiz. Congratulations, Ann.
I love that.
Ann.
Mug me.
What I'd like you to do is send me an email, okay, to messengerondutymf@gmail.com.
That's the other thing.
Messengerondutymf@gmail.com. Hold on. Just send me your name and your address where I can ship you. We'll get the mug shipped to you from Fourth Wall, and you'll get it. So if you send me that email, I'd appreciate it. And congratulations. Go ahead, Mark. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, isn't it you? I sent you these spy files, your spy files. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who don't know, I have a whole treasure trove of internal Scientology documents that are from the Office of Special Affairs. And if I saw anybody in there that had a document, then I would just send them the document. And for some of us, they have more than others. So I would just search the person or search what they refer to that person as. But Mark's initials are MF. So they call him MFer. Isn't that what your code name is?
No.
MFer?
Mofo.
Mofo. That's right. Mofo.
Where's it at? Here, right here.
Mofo Mark. Yeah, that's.
I added the Mark, but they call me Mofo. That's
call him.
Code name.
That was his SP code name was Mofo.
Yeah. Osa, they call me Mofo. And I'm sure
it was the funniest thing. I was like,
actually, you can get T-shirts. I have a T-shirt that says Mofo Mark. You
yeah.
This coffee mug. Go to our merch site. In the description,
just awesome.
Click on there, and you can order these things. They're great. I decided I'm going to embrace it. Why not?
Absolutely.
Hey, there aren't too many worse nicknames. That I'm a mofo. Absolutely. Don't mess with me.
It's so funny. When I was reading, I was reading the spy files that I was going to send you, I was like, are they just calling him a mofo, or is that his name? And then after I saw a bunch of different ones, I'm like, oh no, that's his like SP code name is mofo.
And I didn't know that till you send that to me. And
yeah,
I was like, I can look. There's no way Kirsten, what's her name, Catano. Yeah. There's no way she came up with that nickname. That's got to be from Miscavige. You know what I mean? Because these reports are going to Miscavige. So MF mofo, good.
Yeah.
F you, mofo me,
It's the best, mofo. But that's what I love about it too. Like they're saying that as a way to be like push you down even more. Yeah. Even they're going to talk about, you're never going to see these documents they're writing, but they're still going to talk about you like you're a mofo. And the fact that you made merch out of it, to me, that's what this is all about. Like,
I got a T-shirt, Mofo Mark, and then it has our Scientology stories peeling the onion on this, and you can get it in 8 colors. So if you want one.
Good job, Mark. That's the way to do it.
We took it another step too. We embraced the term rock slammer, so we got a rock slammer T-shirt as well. So if you want to be a rock slammer, you can get that too.
Rock slammer. It's the best. Okay.
Anyway, so let's
get
some questions here real quick here, and we'll get wrapped up here. We don't have a lot of them, so that's okay. Love Dreaming Peach. Question: is Mark from Marcus? Can you speak about Mark and Mark K versus C? LOL. As a cat, I always prefer K to C. Do you feel this way? Ha ha. Go ahead, Mark.
Mark is just Mark. My name is not Marcus. It's not anything else. It's just Mark. I think my parents were in Missouri. I think they were trying to be fancy and throw a C on it, because that's the French spelling. No one in my family is French. I did take French as a child because of that. But no. Comment vous appelez-vous? Je m'appelle Marc. Yeah, no, it's just a C. The funniest thing ever is I went to Starbucks and I said, it's Mark with a C. When I ordered, what's your name? Oh, it's Mark. And I just said, with a C. And when I got my cup, it said Kark. C-A-R-K. Kark. And I was like, well, got to be fair. That is Mark with a C. Just not at the right place, but that is Mark with a C. Is Kark. But
I have the double whammy because I'm M-A-R-K.
Yeah.
But my name, Fisher, F-I-S-H-E-R, can also be spelled F-I-S
with a C.
H-E-R.
Yes, exactly.
So when I tell people, like when I'm on the phone, my name is Mark Fisher, and they're typing out, I say it's M-A-R-K, F-I-S-H-E-R, because it gets misspelled all the time.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm easy. And there are a lot of Marks in Scientology. This has been pointed out to me. Mark Yeager, Mark Ingber, Mark Fisher, Marc Headley. Mark Swanson. Yeah. Mark Swanson, where are you? I've been looking for you. I want to talk to that dude. That dude disappeared. His name is Marcus Swanson, and he's a photographer. There is a very, very famous photographer that's done a lot of stuff for Nike, and his name is Marcus Swanson. Not the same guy. So it's hard to find a photographer named Marcus Swanson when there's another big one by the same name.
I there's a reporter for the Washington Post from the early 90s, and his name is Mark Fisher, spelt exactly the same as mine. And he did
Yeah.
a story on Scientology. And I guarantee you, Miscavige probably had a heart attack when he saw the name.
Really? It's spelled the same way and everything?
Exactly the same. He's still a reporter at the
Wow.
Washington Post.
That's amazing. You know, I got served in a lawsuit one time in Burbank. Marc Headley, it was with a K, but everything else seemed to be legit. There is a Marc Headley who is in the movie industry in Los Angeles, but he tends to be in the more adult entertainment industry than I think the lawsuit was like, Bikini Blondes from Bay Beach the lawsuit was in regards to that production or vampires on Bikini Beach or something like that. And I was like, I'm pretty sure this is another Marc Headley. I'm not this guy. I don't know anything about Bikini Babes on Vampire Beach, but it sounds fun. But no. And sure enough, I looked it up, and there's another Marc Headley who's rocking out some, low level, TNA picks.
Absolutely. Okay, next question here, Mark. This is from Suzanne. Question, Mark. Were you the first person to speak out on YouTube?
I don't think so. I think Tori Chrisman, Mark Bunker, Astra Woodcraft. There was some people that were before me. YouTube only came out in 2005, and I actually have had a channel on YouTube, I want to say since 2008. I started one very early after YouTube started, and I would put videos are still on the channel to this day, just these scrolling hate sites that they had on us at the time. But really wasn't. I think at that time I was still trying to get my life sorted out. And the YouTube wasn't really that big of a platform for the Scientology. I mean, Tori was doing stuff, but there was 4,000 or 5,000 views or 10,000 views. And I was just sort of like, I'm going to go on John and Ken on KFI AM 640, and I'm going to reach 50,000 people. So I was doing that, and a lot of TV shows. We did Tampa Bay Times, and I've done movies in Germany and Denmark, Australia, Louis Theroux, Going Clear. We were part of lots of things that were being done that at the time we really thought that's the way the word was going to get out. And these days, YouTube you just can't beat it. So yeah, those are some of the earlier people that had spoken out.
My earphones just went out, so now I'm listening on speaker. So if it sounds different, it's just my earphones basically just ran out of charge. Anyway, thanks for that question, Suzanne. This is from Michael Wincoop. Question: will Shelley turn on DM in the Church of Scientology?
I doubt it.
No, me too.
She's loyal to L. Ron Hubbard.
She is, and she in her way, she's taken care of in the Scientology way. She can do what she wants within reason in a location that they can keep an eye on her. So
yeah, it is. The weirdest thing about it is that this guy can just disappear somebody, and everybody's cool with it. And even the person themselves is just like, well, I screwed up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that question. Next one from 1ABASP. Question for both. What were your base nicknames? Well, Mofo afterwards, obviously, but no, I didn't. It was just always Click or CLIC. It was always CLIC.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. If you don't have a nickname, a lot of times you're just referred to as your post title. Right. So I was referred to as Pancake QC. Most people would call me Mark, but then also when I was the pre-production director, my crew would call me PPDG, the pre-production director gold. So they PPDG, and then I was assistant producer gold, and they called me APG. But I had a
Pancake though, right? Hey, go see Pancake.
No one really ever called me Pancake, but they did call me Max. For a while, my nickname was Max, and people would call me Max. There were no other Maxes at the property. There was tons of Marks. So Max was a good name, and I like Max. My dog's name's Max.
I hate Miscavige used to call me Fisher all the time.
Yeah.
Fisher,
Yeah.
Fisher. I hate that when
Yeah.
people
He
do
used to
that,
call me Headley.
to the point where after I left Scientology and was out in the real world, I had a boss that I worked for all of a sudden started calling me Fisher,
And you're
and I
like,
pulled
no.
him aside and I said, "Sir, I respect you. Please don't ever call me by my last name.
Yeah.
I do not like it at all." You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was known as
It stimulates,
Headley.
it stimulates you when you hear that
Yeah.
Fisher, Fisher. I'm like,
Yeah. They would call me Headley, and I would get called Headless a lot.
yeah,
Hey, Headless.
yeah, no, he could bastardize names a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, so next one here. All right, Japan of Green Gables question: do you think they still use telexes in the Sea Org? I
They
doubt it.
100% do.
Oh, do they?
They do it electronically now, but the coding and the date format and the number form, they use all that, but just electronically. They send the same things back and forth. It's ridiculous, but because L. Ron Hubbard said that's the way you do it, they got to do it that way forever.
Thanks for that question, Steve Britton. Another question: did you ever consider playing a duplicate for David Miscavige and telling him it was the master, and then play the master and tell him it was a duplicate just to see what he says?
I didn't do this, but a lot of the professional mixers, it was kind of an inside gag with them, where they would be mixing an event or doing a video mix down or a music mix down, and he would tell them, "Oh, it just seems a little heavy on the bass," or "I think in this section you got to brighten it up a little bit," and then they would do nothing and tell him they did that, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's perfect now." And they would do that at live events, and they would also do that in recordings. This was a very common thing for him to say, "I want this," and then they'd say they did it, and then he would acknowledge, "Oh, it's much better now," and they'd be like, "We didn't fucking do anything, you fucking maniac."
Great, thanks, Stephen. We got another question here. This is from Cece. She's a member of our channel, and we want to thank you for being a member of our channel. Was Paulette Otten same post as Renee Norton? Paulette tried to promote me to INT flag banking officer. She came to me at AOLA from over the rainbow. She said Miscavige had approved it per the routing on the legal size folder cover 94-96. I don't know Paulette Otten. Do you know?
Never heard of Paulette Otten. Renee Norton was the Supercargo Golden Era Productions. So she wouldn't have anything to do with anybody else except for Golden Era Productions, or if she was getting somebody from Los Angeles or an organization somewhere nearby, a C organization, that was a person was going to be promoted to Golden Era Productions. She was demoted and offloaded from the International Property in the 90s, and she became the what's called the commanding officer of one of the Los Angeles area organizations, and it was ASHO Foundation, which is the Advanced St. Hill Organization of Los Angeles, and they were the ones that operated at nighttime and on the weekends, and she started a slogan: "The night church is the right church." But I don't even know if she's still in the C organization. I think she worked with Aaron. I'm pretty sure Aaron worked at ASHO. So I'm pretty sure he's familiar with Renee Norton. Yeah. He might even had a dust up or two with her. She's a firecracker.
Let me ask you this. Who would you rather deal with in gold, Mark? Wendell Reynolds or Jason Bannock?
Wendell in a second. Wendell was Wendell Reynolds was the commanding officer of Golden Era Productions. And this dude, I describe this guy in my book, and anybody who knows Wendell Reynolds and reads my book will say that the description of him is the most accurate description of a person they've had. This dude would wear a shirt that looked like he ironed it while he was wearing it. He
looked like he was straight out of the Ivy League or straight out of the United States Navy. He was perfectly dressed at all times, right?
And he was a smoker, and Sea Org members smoke. And if you're a smoking Sea Org member, at the Ant Base, usually you smoked Camel non-filters. This guy would reach. We had polyester, like fake Navy uniforms, and they had breast pockets. He would reach into his breast pocket where he had a pack of cigarettes and just pull out a single cigarette. It was the most. It was like a magic trick, and he would do it all day long. He'd just be like, and you'd be like. And then you'd see the pack on the desk or something later. It wasn't all open at the top. It had the same little tiny part torn open, just like everybody else. And you're like, how is he doing that? How is he just taking on his? But he literally looked like, and his hair was always slicked back.
Slicked back. He looked like Pat Riley from the Lakers.
He looked he was tall like Pat Riley. He had the exact same haircut, and he played basketball. That's true. He'd look like Pat. I didn't know who Pat Riley was when I wrote the book. After living in LA, I was like, oh, I get it. But that is a very perfect description of his hairdo. But he had this slick back hairdo, and you would see him at 8:30 in the morning. We'd have a muster. The CO of every organization stands at the front in the middle of the crew, and he says, okay, today we're going to do this. You see him at 8:30 at muster with that hair. You could see him 9 hours later later at night. His shirt and pants had not accumulated a wrinkle. Not one hair had been out of place. He just looked like he had like Madame Tussauds fucking wax figure that could never be. He was never dirty either, which is a weird thing.
Look, even in Renos, we used to wear blue boiler suits with blue baseball caps. That was the uniform with black boots. It was immaculate.
Perfect. Yep. And his boots were perfectly shined. Because I remember when he got in trouble, he was working for me. Whenever anybody at the International Horde would get busted, they would come and work in sets or props, or they do like hard labor for the film unit. And he was building sets for a while, and he was wearing that, like you said, an estates uniform. And he would get out of the van. They would bring him to this Air Force base we were shooting at, and he'd get out, and I'd be like, "Are you kidding me? Really? With this outfit, you can do the same exact thing." It's just like perfectly pressed, shines perfect. Everybody else hasn't shined their shoes in 3 years. They're got stains and paint and oil, and no, not this dude. Very
who else
immaculate.
smoked unfiltered Camels for years was Miscavige. He was 2 packs a day when I worked for him. But I don't know if you knew this or not, because I think he quit at some point. He used to use chewing tobacco, Skull Bandits. He would have those little packets, and he'd put it between his cheek and gum when he wasn't smoking, and then he had a little spittoon that he would spit in.
I heard that from somebody else. I mean, I had the when you're in the Sea Org, you're not going to put a cigarette out halfway through.
No, you save it. I don't smoke, but I saw it all the time.
That's a lot of. But if you smoked it all the way through, you'd smoke it down to the cherry. There was no filter, so you'd literally be holding a coal, and you'd be like,
you need a roach clip in order to hold it, so you don't burn your fingers.
Well, if you smoke long enough and you're in the Sea Org, your fingers just get blisters, but my forefinger and my thumb were completely yellow from the nicotine, and just always. And I don't. I can't imagine smoking a Camel not filter.
I speculated on his health about a week ago on a video, because 2 packs a day of Camels, Skull Bandits chewing tobacco, and then after I left, I heard cigar. Well, he started doing cigars when I was there. And then drinking whiskey. And I think Tom DeVox said he was drinking a bottle of whiskey a night or something.
That Macallan 15-year. But also
his health, look, I have friends that are my age that were in the that have passed away recently. You know, how can his health be at 63 years old when he's been abusing? Plus he has asthma. You know what I mean?
And he takes a ton of human growth hormone.
I didn't know that.
When he was working out and doing lots of that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure, but he does have a private chef, and I think he's trying to get more healthy, but he looks, I'm just going to say,
if you think about his stress level I mean, 'cause he
Yes.
lives in a cocoon of security. He can't go anywhere. He's like
Yeah.
Hubbard. I said that he's like Hubbard. He's in hiding now from all the lawsuits and the private investigators and the process servers. He's in hiding. Now he's living a luxurious life in that hiding, but he can't just go out and do things. I mean, if he's spotted, he's going to get served, you know? And so
Yeah.
he's really become, in a cocoon,
He
you know?
also, I'm going to say from working there and then living out in the real world, since 2005 now, stress is a great driver of sickness and
Yeah.
disease. And that dude is throwing tantrums and stressed out 24/7. So I can't imagine that that's healthy for the body. And anyone who's knew him and worked with him and sees the pictures that they have up on the internet or these videos, I mean, he looks like he's aged 30 more years than
Absolutely.
he
And
kind of looks like
definitely
an old, kind of
definitely
like
hair
one of the,
plugs, right, Mark? Definitely
yeah,
hair
like,
plugs.
oh yeah.
I've seen pictures of his brother Ronnie and his dad. His brother Ronnie's bald, right? And I go, he's got this full pompadour. Are you kidding me? That's either a
Yeah.
toupee or hair plugs.
Yeah. Yeah, he
I still
definitely.
got my hair, not a lot, but I still got it.
Hey, I'm good too. But yeah, no, he doesn't. He looks odd. At least I'll say that he looks a bit odd compared to what he used to look like.
Absolutely. Well, and I started thinking about it because you know the people that I know that have recently passed away. They're like 65, 66 years old. You know, it's not out of the question that he could have poor health and something happened to him. And then my
Well,
whole question is, who's he grooming to take over? Do you ever
yeah, he's
see
not.
anybody? There's
Yeah, he's
nobody
not.
young enough. Number one, he doesn't trust anybody.
Yeah,
So anybody he's so, I'm going to groom you to take over. He'd chop him up, you know?
yeah. The other thing you got to dig is Sea Org members are putting in 120-hour weeks every week. So when I added it up, I was there for 15 years, and I put in about 45 years. If you just did a 9 to 5 job,
Yeah.
I put in 45 years of work in the 15 years that I was there. If you just base it on a 9 to 5 week.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that, I'm pretty sure he got in when he was like 15 or
He
16.
was 16. He just dropped out of high school. I met him a month later when I joined the Sea Org.
So
We were
yeah,
roommates.
so
Yeah.
16, he's what, 67? How
He's
old is he?
63. No, he's
63.
2 years younger than me. I just
Yeah.
turned 65.
I'm not a math whiz, but that seems like it might be over 40 years worth of nonsense and stress and drama and
Yeah, and
tantrums.
I also said, look, he has no real friends. He has no family. He's got his wife hidden away. He doesn't get along with his other sisters and stuff like that. He's
Yeah.
basically going to die alone. You know what I mean? He's going to be like Hubbard in hiding somewhere and be
No,
afraid. That's
yeah, he's
exactly- That's his
he's
history.
alre-
Or he'll be in a jail cell by himself.
Yeah, he's already got the Hubbard playbook going great. His family is wrecked. None of his relatives want anything to do with Scientology, and he's banished his wife. The next stage
He's
is
hiding from the law.
the next stage is FBI raid. That's where we're at in this story. So then after the FBI raid, then he goes into seclusion, and we never hear from him
That's
ever
what
again.
I said he's probably got money stashed somewhere. He's probably already researched where the non-extradition treaties are, so he can go to some country where they can't touch him. And he's basically his history in the future is already laid out for him. Anyway, and hopefully he'll get imprisoned and put in jail.
Yeah, I think he's on track. The Hubbard playbook's going right the way it should.
Let me go through we got just a few more and we'll get to
Awesome.
Steve Britton, did Golden Ear ever use digital audio tape for masters?
We didn't use them as masters. We did use DATs. I want to say DATs were a Sony format, and we did use DATs in the mix studios and in the audio recording. We would use DATs as like a backup, not as a master, but as a digital backup. And also we would use DATs to A/B mixes. So if there was a mix down that was done, they'd offload that to DAT, and then if there were copies of that made for other areas, we'd A/B that against the DAT. Good question, Stephen Britton. Stephen Britton is a frequent flyer. I don't know what they call them. Do you guys have peelers, or what do you call?
Yeah, well, our channel members are like peeling masters, peeling professionals, and peeling supporters. We were going to call them master peelers. The channel told me we should turn it around.
Master peel.
So
yeah, they're called
the peeling masters, not master peelers.
For a while they were calling themselves cracker lickers over on our channel. Yeah, I'm a cracker licker.
Thanks for that question. Let me see here. I got another one here for you. Where is it at? Here, I think this is another one from Steve. Question: when are we going to see a film of your book, Mark? And who would you want to play you?
I don't know. I know that I was contacted by somebody that wanted to get the rights, but they wanted to get it in Europe. They didn't want it in the United States. They wanted to buy the rights for Europe. And I was like, well, that would be, I'll definitely, give somebody the rights, but I'd rather do it in the U.S. first. But people have done Carla, a former Scientologist that was an actress that we used at Golden Air Productions. Her name was Carla Zamudio, and herself and another woman by the name of, I want to say her name was Rachel Myers. They did a short film of my book, and it was actually very cool. And yeah, I would love for somebody to do that. It's not really like my thing. If somebody wants to do it, then I would be okay with doing it. But
yeah, it's kind of hard because of all the language, and all the stories are so intricate. I mean,
yeah,
you and I would watch some movie of your book or of somebody else's book. We go like, oh, they're just skimming the surface.
They really could
show it all. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you fit a book into two? I mean, obviously people could do it.
Yeah.
But Danny Masterson, definitely don't want him to play me.
No.
But yeah, no, I would say I think like Matt Damon would be a good me.
There you go.
I don't know. Or the guy that plays Hawkeye. I love that dude.
Yeah.
Jeremy Renner. Yeah. I feel like I've got like maybe Jeremy Renner's got like a Mark vibe.
Yeah. Okay, this is Denver Steve-O. Hey, buddy, I see you here. He's a good guy, good friend.
Yes.
He said, I would have been considered a wimp. I smoke Camel Lights.
I know. Yeah. When I first started smoking, I smoked Marlboro Reds, and then I smoked Camel Lights. And then when I went to the Amp Base, it was like, oh, Camel Lights are for the weak. You want to be a boss, you got to smoke Camel Straights. Those things are hardcore.
How long ago did you quit?
Oh, I quit. I haven't smoked. I think I quit smoking Camel Straights when I was still at the base. After I left, I smoked here and there, and sometimes I'll have a cigarette just casually, but I don't need to smoke. I don't have to smoke. I'm like kind of, I don't know how to say it. I'm like a pretty high strung kind of guy. I've got a lot of energy, so I'm not trying to stimulate anything. I'm trying to like calm down.
Well, let me ask you this question. What do you like to do for fun? I mean, like, obviously, aside from the channel and the work you do, what do you like to do? Like, what is your relaxation or fun thing you like to do?
My latest thing is I've been doing a lot of fishing. I go fishing with my my youngest and my middle kid a lot, and just fishing, just doing stuff with the kids. Anything with the kids I consider fun. So I took my middle guy to a concert the other night in Denver, and I'll take them to concerts if they want to go, even if it's music I don't like. I went and saw Billie Eilish at Red Rocks, and stuff like that. Concerts, going to concerts, and fishing or camping or going into the mountains we live in Colorado, so we like to go skiing or sledding or, snowmobiling, stuff like that.
Who's your favorite comedian?
That's hard. I like Tom Segura. I'd say Tom Segura right now is probably, I like him the most. And I sort of, I respect what he's done. And he's also a podcaster. And I kind of, I don't know, it's something about him and his wife, Christina, because they have a podcast together. And I just went and saw Christina, his wife, Christina P, recently. And I actually hung out with her for a while, and we talked about Scientology and a bunch of that. I would love to go on their podcast, Your Mom's House. But yeah, I like Anthony Jeselnik.
I'm old school. He's no longer alive, but I love Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
YouTube
No.
I watch of Rodney Dangerfield, I am on the floor laughing. And I saw him live at Bally's here in Las Vegas when he was still alive.
Yeah.
And I had never laughed so hard in my life.
Yeah. I like Rodney, Carlin, Murphy,
All the old guys,
Pryor. I like those guys too. I grew up, my dad was a big fan of comedy. So I grew up every night. When I was a little kid, I'd stay up and I'd watch The Tonight Show before I went to sleep with Johnny Carson. And I watched roasts and
they're great. They're great. They're really
when you
funny.
got
If they're uncensored, because they could tell some really dirty, funny jokes.
Yeah, my dad had HBO, so he was playing. I was watching roasts and lots of that stuff, and I'm a fan of that. I'm sort of a fan of roast comedy. So I like. There's a show called Kill Tony with Tony Hinchcliffe. Big fan of that show. I watch that every week, and yeah, I'm kind of getting into the whole Austin comedy scene right now, and probably planning a trip down there to the mothership to see some guys down there. But
I got one last question I want to ask you. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the best part about being a parent? Because I got out of the Sea Org and I never have had kids, and you obviously, this is an older photo, but you've got 3 kids, and I wanted to find out. I wanted to end on a positive. What's your favorite thing about being a dad?
I think my favorite thing about being as a dad is trying to teach my kids all the things that nobody told me. And so not just the stuff you learn in the school, but like, saving money and doing what you want, like what you have a passion in doing, as opposed to what I want them to do or what somebody told them they should do. Like, try to figure out what you like to do or what your interests are, and try to do that kind of thing. Don't do anything because you think you have to, or because life is in the situation it's in, something bad is kind of forcing you into something. Try to follow your passion, and also if you feel like you've done something of value and you can do that as a living, and people can pay you to do something that you like doing and that is a valuable thing, try to do that, because otherwise, what do they say? Do work. Whatever you work in, do work that you love, not work that you're doing because you got to get paid. And
if you can, something you enjoy, that you have a passion for. I mean, that's the secret. That's really the secret to work. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I try to, and I try to expose them to lots of different things in life, so that they can see that, if you're a good person, good things will happen to you. And, if you're a bad person, it's likely bad things are going to happen to you. Yeah. So try to do more good. And also try to, try not to just be a consumer. Everyone's a consumer to some degree or another. But if you're also a producer and you're putting good things into the world, then that's a good balance. So try to not just consume things, try to also give something back to the world. That's
great. Well,
But
Mark, I want
I
to
love
thank
my
you.
kids. My kids are like
They're great.
my world. So
I understand. Well, I want to thank you for being on here, Mark. I mean, we could do hours because there's so
we could
many
do
other
another
things.
time. Yeah, we don't. This doesn't have to be the only time we do it.
No,
We
no,
could
I'd
do
love to have
if
you
there's
on
other.
many times. Yeah.
Yeah, if there's other questions you had, or I mean,
Well, and there's things you don't know that I was involved in before you ever got to the base that I
yeah,
could tell you stories about that you go, oh yeah, really? Oh yeah. You know what I mean?
I know it's so wild.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I just wanted to do the wrap up business here. Please
sure.
subscribe to our channel. Our Scientology Stories Peeling the Onion. If you've enjoyed this, hit that like button and the notification button. Do the same for Mark at Blown for Good, I think is your channel address. But anyway, we'd appreciate it if you would subscribe. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments section. I'd like to know any feedback or opinion. Just go down there and ask. And if you want to order any of our merchandise, go down there as well. And then the last thing I wanted to mention too is if you want to buy me a coffee, some people like to donate money, that type of thing, buy me a coffee, or you can go to our merch site. You can donate on our merchandise site and they don't take any of the money. It's not like YouTube
Nice.
where they do a super chat or whatever, they take 30%. Yeah, no, on our fourth wall that you donate, it's 100% to the channel. So
Nice.
anyway, I would appreciate that. Anything else you'd like to say, Mark, before we end off?
No, I appreciate it. Hopefully, this works out for your channel and you get lots of views. And yeah, we could even do, if you want, we could do like an imp-based deep dive every once in a while. And we could just talk about the imp-based stuff. There's not a lot of, I mean, I want to do some videos with Sterling because unlike you, he was there for most of the time I was. You were gone in 1990, right?
I left September 15th, 1990.
There you go. So
literally, you know,
yeah.
it's
We
like
didn't even
brought up. I'm there and then I'm gone and you're there, you know.
It's like Janice and her husband Paul were also at the imp base.
Yeah.
But remember when I told you there was that flood in August of 1990?
Yeah.
That's the day they blew the base, I think.
And I blew that same day the second time. We both blew the same time without speaking to each other.
Oh, I didn't know you also blew on the same day at the same time.
Yeah, because I went, Miscavige is crazy. Foaming at the mouth.
Yeah.
Briefing in the front of the goal. I'm standing next to Paul. We didn't even talk. And we're both thinking, we're out of here. And I left. I had my car.
Yeah.
That night I took off too. And then the funny thing is the next day, Mike Sutter, they came and recovered me at my sister's house because I was going crazy. I didn't want to leave my wife. And then they made the mistake when they were driving back. They said, oh yeah, Janice and Paul, they blew last night too. And then I went, oh, that's a big mistake. Because you know what? The next chance I get, I'm getting out of here because you don't know who you're going to hook up with or what you're going to do. You know.
And also, we didn't know about the internet.
No, there was no internet.
So, so you wouldn't even think, oh, I can just like find this person wherever they are
by calling out of a phone book Julie's dad in San Diego, and that's how
nice.
She found me.
That's awesome. Anyway, yeah, we could do so that's a great idea. We should just every once in a while, maybe once a month or every few weeks or whatever you want. We could just do an imp-based deep dive. I love just talking about it, just to document it. And also, there's people that are going to watch this video that aren't watching Aaron's channel. They're watching my channel. So somebody might stumble upon this. But then if anybody ever talks about the imp base or searches the imp base, this video will come up as a search result because it's got imp base, has a keyword, and they'll find out all about it.
That's right. And then we use photographs too. I mean, Janice has a lot of photos. I like photos. So, we put a little bit of, visual there as well as telling the story. So it's cool.
Nice.
Anyway. Hey, thanks very much, Mark. Until
no problem, dude.
Time,
appreciate it.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you
Bye,
next time.
guys.